does this even allow me to? I don't know what's the deal with this. Like, do I get
It
to
says
see
we're
the
live.
chat? Huh?
Yeah, it should be. It's private chat, and then click over to comments.
Oh,
And
and
that should be the
comments.
yeah.
The
Comments will
YouTube
be what comes up. Yeah,
the YouTube
private chat
comments
will be
should be
just
there.
where I
Okay.
send you my dick pics. That's where that's at.
Okay, that's cool. My StreamYard seems super nice, but like $20 a month, it's a bit too
Dude,
much.
I'm kind of upset. Like anytime I hate StreamYard because like for whatever reason, especially whenever we do it over a junkie, like it doesn't let me use it doesn't recognize my camera, my good camera,
Oh,
and it does for this one. So I'm like, oh shit, this is the first time I did it with yours. So I was like, oh, maybe they got better or I updated something on my
how do
end.
you how do I share this stream, man?
Yeah, I was just about to look through the same thing
I'm
to see
completely
share.
lost over this shit, man.
I have to ask this. I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt.
Whoop. I'm gonna try to just like grab this is the boomer. This is the boomer MMA hour with
This is
Dan Thomas, our
the
special
boomer way.
guest.
You just go into YouTube and try to find the stream
I'm
so
gonna
you can
copy
share
and
it.
paste the URL and then just post it over here.
Remember when the internet didn't have like share buttons all over and you had to like copy paste stupid URLs. And sometimes you copied a URL that was like private, so it didn't work anywhere else. Those were the days, man.
Yeah, I know, right? Like it's just much more simpler. You know, going to your buddy's computer and setting
Hey,
meatspin.com to the homepage when he wasn't looking, you know?
hey, Melo, what's up, man? This is the Boomer MMA hour.
Hey.
We're going to be like super grumpy over here, and we will be just like complaining a lot. I think that's what it's that's going to be the theme of this.
We were just talking about what everybody's complaining about, and like, me too. I'm guilty of it, but like, I was just saying how silly it is because it all comes down to the same answer. It's the UFC schedule / the corporification of the sport. Anything from matchups to why are we going to Azerbaijan to like, yeah, man, like it's all the same answer. It really is. Like whether you like it or not, it's like it's a lot of the same thing. I found the YouTube link, Feño. I'm gonna share it out now.
Okay, yeah, I found the link too, man.
We're on the Fight Site channel, right?
Yeah, this is a Fight Side Presents channel. That's the name of the channel. I'm also sharing here. Listen, kids, Randy Couture was really ahead of his. I'm, I had a hit tweet about that, and the funny thing is, was like, what's the name of Randy's son? Ryan, right? Ryan Couture was sharing that shit, and I was like, man, Ryan is pretty old now. Like, how old is Randy, man?
Yeah, Ryan's the man. Ryan was old getting into this. Like, shout out to Felipe Melo, by the way. That's. I feel like that's me for sure. Like, Zane Simon would fist bump you right now. That's definitely his friendly and rightful and justful dunk, by the way, on me. He's always like, we don't need any more Randy Couture stories, Dan. Of course, you're gonna like. Whenever I used to joke over the top 5 shows, Feño, like I got to ban BJ Penn from my list. I put him on too much initially, right? Especially now, you got to ban BJ Penn for different reasons. But I had to do the same with Randy Couture if I did a top 5 podcast with Zane because he'd always just give me so much shit. He'd be like, oh, of course you're gonna have some Randy Couture on here. Or
man, it sucks that BA. It sucks that BA went crazy because he was so cool, man.
I know, man. Especially with like what speaking of bad matchmaking that we were talking about and the complaints being all the same, but with the whole Islam, like I'm not even like, dude, I was a Islam fan when like even like before people were fully like coming all over Khabib, the mention of him, like before he when he was still on the prelims of like Fox cards, the UFC was still bearing him. Like I feel like it was like Luke Thomas, like myself and like a handful of other nerds who were like, oh, this Makhachev guy is actually like super. He's like the super technical version of Khabib. Look at the hand fighting, right? and all that stuff. And like, so like, I don't even want to like be like the hater or whatever, but like people totally, I get what they're doing, but not only is it a stupid debate, but it's just like extra stupid and limited because they're just like, oh, whoever now is good or whoever have head-to-head victory over other good guy is greatest guy. But Zero in week he had less number in loss column. He greatest guy.
Well,
And like
that debate has turned to shit, man.
right. And as much as we just open like shitting on BJ Penn or alluding to like all the shit you could shit on BJ Penn for, like the sad part is he's still, and Anik said it the other day, like and like so some people still in my opinion get it right. When you're talking about legacies, like people don't understand what a legacy is. Legacy is not who has shinier record with aura. Like no. It's like who actually did shit for the division, man. And like again, you got another guy with Islam where it's like, dude, I don't even. It's like The Last of Us 2. It's like, man, I don't want to criticize it because there are so many fucking transphobes and homophobes criticizing the show. Where like, I don't want to get mixed in with that crowd. Like you know what I'm saying? Like
nah, for sure, man.
I don't want to be like, Islam only fought 145ers, but at the same time, it's like even though he's moving up to 170 now, it's like, yeah, man, like what was your legacy? You fought a bunch of like former featherweights and like. On short notice fights and rematches because again,
it's not his fault for sure, but at the same time, like you gotta have something to show at the end of the day, like, and I feel like it goes both ways too, because like as I was complaining earlier this week about like John Jones and like the wins against former champions, like they're former champions for a reason. They're old, like GSP and Aldo, Mighty Mouse, they were not allowing other guys to be champions. That's the reason they were not fighting former champions. Like,
yeah, that's a great point, and you made that point great in that tweet the other day that you're referencing. That's a fantastic point about the context of like people don't understand about these names and stuff, and like or like even doing the work to understand like, oh, this person was a name at the time, or like giving that respect, like.
Yeah, I think people look back, especially when new fans just get to see like the tail end of a career, they get really the wrong idea of how good a fighter was. A fighter that I feel like is like super disrespected, and I don't even have an agenda to like this guy because he's like a far right Cuban, but like Lamas is so good in his prime. Lamas is a tremendous fighter.
Yes.
But people saw him when he was old, and he was like having like super scrappy fighters with like low tier featherweights. That's not like actual representation of the guy who he was at the time. Like when he was that win streak leading to the auto fight when he beat like Cub Swanson and Eric Koch, that was great, man. He was on fire at the time.
Yeah, and you couldn't blame Lamas too for maybe like inflating. And not trying to hate on shit on MMA Masters, but like the little bit of success they had, you look at it, it's like the guys. It was like Cesar Mutanch, who say what you will about his chin, that was like faltering, really weird, and like the whole middle of his career looked like he was done. But like whatever success he did have from that camp, he brought with him. You know what I'm saying? Like Ricardo Lamas already had a career before he went to that camp, of success. To your point,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
But people are like, oh, MMA, and I'm not trying to like fucking talk shit on them, but like. I know the analyst community has definitely picked up like, yeah, they don't really have much of a process, do they? They turn guys into like aimless outfighters, like, but like, unlike Jackson Wink, like without even the round winning priority to their game. Like, say what you want about Jackson Wink, but like they were consistent round winners, whether they deserve to or not. That they had a goal.
Yeah, I
right?
think you gotta give it especially to Jackson, that Jackson was like very aware of how like the judging worked. Mm-hmm. And he was always giving the right instruction to get fighters to win. I think as time went on, I realized that I have a lot more of a problem with the way that Winklejohn teaches boxing than the way that like Jackson was, especially in the corner. Jackson was always great. I feel like I've been a Jackson Wink hater for a long time, but I cannot deny, man. I would say like there's a reason that GSP had like Jackson in his corner, not during camp, in his corner. Like if you see like the GSP in his prime, he goes to his corner, and Firas is his main guy. But who's right in the center giving instruction to GSP? It's always Jackson.
Yeah.
That's the main guy in the corner. And I feel like there's obviously a difference between being a good cornerman and a good coach. For example, like people, it's very popular on Twitter to crap on like Javier Mendez. Like a lot of people like hate him, like absolutely hate him. I think he's probably fine. Like I don't know much about it, but there's a reason a lot of fighters trust in him. But I feel like Mendez during corners, most of the time pretty solid, I would say. He was very good most of the time with Habib. He's decent with Islam right now. He was good with Kane, with DC, with Luke. Like,
yeah, force the dogfight, DC. Force the dogfight.
But he like people give him shit because he's not super technical most of the time. But he says the right stuff. I feel, man.
Yeah, totally. And I think with Jackson, it was like people make fun of him. It became like a point of joke, like, oh, he's a psychologist. Oh, he's gonna, like I also think of something John McCarthy gave shit to Jason Herzog for. And it's funny because it's a parallel. I think, say what you will about Jackson Wink, say what you will about Herzog. Like Herzog's my favorite ref for a reason. And I know he might not be as stern, and he breaks like that cop rule where it's like, who cares if you're the asshole? You maintain control, John McCarthy, right? Like, he doesn't check that box for people, which is like a big role. And I'm like, is it a big role, or is it because like the masculine machoism or whatever of the sport mixed with the guy who, popularized that job was like a cop from the LA riots, Big John, right?
Yeah.
But I get along good with Big John. But even like talking, like I forget talking about, we brought up something like Herzog. I was like, it was like a low blow. And he was like, oh, yeah, I like how Herzog speaks to the fighters. And this night, he's like, oh, yeah, he's great. He'll stop time. Hell, he'll even make sure your cup's positioned right for you. Like kind of like making a joke about it. Like he's like, he'll check your balls for you. He's so concerned, like taking the compliment, like, oh, and I get what he was saying. It was funny. But I was like, but like you could tell there's like Greg Jackson had a lot of that criticism too. But it was like, no, it was smart. He knew how to talk to fighters. Even fighters as good as GSP were scared in there. And as we've seen before, like shout out to my guy Nick Six, really, really good with it, right? Like,
I love Nick Six in the corner.
Paul Felder, yeah, that Paul Felder and RDA fight, or the Dan Egan Barbosa fight, right? These like contentious splits, a lot of that's how you're talking to your fighter, because again, you don't see if it landed clean or whatnot, or this or that. And I'm to the point now, especially with like, of course I have the gambling, so I'm extra hyper vigilant, right? When there's a clean shot, Feño, I immediately look to see like where the judges, I'm always tracking where the judges are. And I'm just like, okay, Cleary, you got a good view of that one. When this fucking scorecard comes out for this round, you have no excuse not to give, because sometimes you might not want to say it, but like a lot of, like you can miss as a judge, there's like a pillar or there's something in the way. And if the round's close enough, you can miss a key shot that completely swings the round.
For sure, man.
So, it's like, I don't know how we got off on that, but it's just like
the thing about I feel like obviously we're, as a community, we're all very, very rough on the judges. Yeah. But sometimes people don't realize that the seats aren't great to see all the action. Like there's a lot that you can miss, especially when imagine that the fighter is like the back of the fighter is right in front of you, and he goes to a shoulder roll. You don't know if that shit landed or if it was on the shoulder. Yep. Like you have no idea. You just gotta deduce by what you're seeing from the subsequent actions. So I feel like sometimes we see like funky scorecards, but you don't know, man, because it's all by chance where they end up fighting in the fight. Like it's random. So
or the ref standing in front of the ref standing in front. Yeah, you back to the chat. But that's why we brought it up though, right, Feño? Because if you don't know, so if you have a corner yelling like, ooh, good shot, you can kind of subconsciously trick the judge like, oh, maybe it did land.
Yeah. Let me get back to the chat a little bit. Lucas
Maciel the says, in the chat.
Yeah, I think I've only seen him get dropped 20 times. He's talking about Lamas. Yeah, that's right, man. Mr. Stitchface, hey, what's up, man? Shayna Baszler made a good point. Sandwich one of your bitter fuck MMA Twitter threads, but MMA fans don't learn the history of the sport for sure, man. They are super convinced that fire for like not even long ago, like 7 years ago, they are like a lower level of competition, and that's insane to think, man.
It is. It's nuts. It's nuts. Yeah.
We have Ghost. Yeah, Twitter is a mess right now, man.
That made me legit LOL inside, Ghost. Like, that's one of those things where I saw your comment, and I'm always happy to see you, Ghost. But that comment was just like, I was like, oh yeah, all is well, because obviously I try to steer clear as much as I can, back a little more. But that was funny comment.
Jimmy Kudo says, "Who is the worst fighter to judge optics wise?" There are some fighters. I don't have like a name immediately in my head, but there are some guys, man, that are like a mess to judge, right? Like especially fighters that play to the judges.
Jankweight.
Oh, Jankweight is a whole nother topic. But fighters, for example, like Benson Henderson, they're super annoying to judge because they're like super consciously selling bullshit to the judges.
As much as we hate to say it, maybe because we're just tricked, but even, I don't want to say Aldo and just narrow him or even say him, but like guys of that technical echelon where it's just like, how are you not seeing what he's doing? But then at the same time, it's like they aren't the most active, which is like totally the meta. So I always hate like when I fall in love with a dude who's like, and maybe less of a problem for you, Feño. You're more of a boxer, puncher, action type fighter fan, which I am too. The body shots, all that shit. But for example, when I fall in love with like, a counter guy, or we're seeing a lot of more back foot wrestlers, right, and that kind of being more effective style, and they're usually got to be really technical to pull that off. So there'll be stuff in their game that I like, but part of me hates it because I'm like, oh, you're just asking for the judges to rob you,
Yeah.
Maybe Leon Edwards would be a great example.
Yeah. And I feel like if GSP wasn't as active with the jab, he would be super prone to getting robbed. But he was making sure to control the striking portions with the hard jabs and good defense.
And takedowns. Takedowns were worth more back then too.
Yeah, that too. Like there's some rounds that they could get sketchy nowadays.
Well, like he would have lost the first fight. I mean, even back with that criteria, people thought he lost the first fight to BJ. Remember that?
Oh
like
yeah,
BJ was I partied and
sure.
just people ended up in the hospital. Like, where was the damage there? Like
yeah. Lucas Marcel says, I actually think Jack doesn't make things so easy sometimes. He's talking about Della Maddalena.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm surprised they got his fight with Holland, right? Yeah, I was super nervous about that because I was like every round was for Jack Della, but they were close enough that they might fuck this up. I was actually very surprised that it wasn't a split decision, man.
Me too. I was happy to be wrong, and I said that beforehand because I picked Bilal. But in all my breakdowns, I'm like, I hope I'm wrong here. And in my defense, I feel like I did a good job making a case for Jack. So much so that I feel like it actually made my pick even worse because it's like, dude, you not just got it wrong, but you made the case. You know what I'm saying? That being said, also in my defense, part of the logic of why I picked Bilal was because even though I don't feel necessarily, I love the style. Obviously, you're a big fan of the style, Feño. I was talking to my striking coach. He's like, oh yeah, I'm all stoked because not only does he love the same fighters, but the stuff that he teaches is very similar, like the Peter Jans and Jack Della Maddalena's, the folding frames, the hand fighting, the body work, right? So like I would love the style, but like we're talking about the judges, like to answer that question, I think, which is a great question from the chat. He fights in close margins. In my breakdown, I'm picking Bilal because even if Jack's winning, he fights in such close margins to where unless he's going to get the knockout, I don't trust the judges to get it, to get it right. And even though I had it 49-46, I don't know what your scorecard was. I didn't have the 48-47. At the same time, I wasn't surprised. And I'm like, well, that kind of validates my pick in a way because I was like, that was the whole thing. Even as good as a masterclass as it was, it still came down to the fifth round, whether we agree or not.
Yeah. And especially because there was a point that I wanted to make.
Sorry, I got so windy. When did we?
No. Don't worry. I'm trying to remember. But the thing about that fight too is that there was one thing that because Jack fought more of a slickster kind of fight in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that even though it doesn't go with the criteria, it played to him is that fighters, the judges hate when fighters are swinging at air, and even though Bilal was connecting a lot, he was missing a lot. And those are like great optics for Jack Della.
Yes. Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
and then we go to my classic example of the quite the contrary of the fighter who's winning is missing, so he's losing is the TJ Dillashaw against Dominic Cruz. Like very easy 4 rounds for TJ in my opinion. Don't come at me, man. But and I know it was close, but yeah, I mean the swinging that air was like, and defense is not on the criteria, but they still like
Yeah. But this was before the hard criteria shift, right? Because they made the hard criteria shift officially in 2019, but you can actually see evidence that they were, and I know that they were, but I'm saying talking about like if you actually go back and watch the fights, it's not just hearsay. They were actually implementing the more damage / impact actual word
yeah.
criteria like back in 2018. But the fight you just referenced was 2016. So if that fight, to your point, Feño, if that fight takes place just a couple of years later, I don't even think that's a hot take at all. That's not a hot take at all, what you just said.
Yeah, and that's where you realize how like fans are like very hard on the judges, but at the end of the day, they end up respecting the decisions most of the time. Like the narrative in mainstream MMA is that Dominic Cruz had this great comeback and he put he put it to TJ Dillashaw winning the decision, and it wasn't like that at all to me. Like even if you think Dominic won, you had to know that was a very close fight. It wasn't like he showed him levels or anything, like people love to say nowadays. And also with fights that we just saw like last year, like that the narrative that Belal dominated Leon and Merab dominated Shan are very popular. And like they're kind of crazy, man.
Yeah, if anything, O'Malley, say what you will about O'Malley, he's the one person that was able to really expose a weakness in Merab. Aside from, catching him in a left hook combination, which is body shots, body teeps. He's got a crazy cardio, but doesn't mean you can't attack the engine.
For sure.
Those things folded him in round 5.
And if you
go
back, and if you go back, and if you go like way back, actually, like if you see like both Merab losses before that, against Ricky and against Frankie, Ricky Simon,
he's back,
and against Frankie Saenz, both guys went to the body a lot too, and were able to keep up with the cardio of Merab attacking the body.
That's a good point. That
fight is crazy because Frankie Saenz he like super clearly won that fight. I'm surprised he wasn't robbed in that one, but that's a good win, man. Because like obviously that's not as good. That's not like champion Merab, but Merab was always a beast, man.
I think I remember betting that fight too. I can't remember which side I bet though, to be honest.
And it's funny because it's one of those that is like Serra Longo versus Mark Henry. Those fights are kind of weird because they have spent like a lot of time together, those guys. So
I miss Mark Henry. Oh, Jersey. I remember talking to him, and he goes, you don't know Mike. I think I got some of your code. He goes, you don't know my code. And I go, when you say aluminum and you want your fighter to push him to the fence, he goes, fuck, I got to change my code. This was off air too, which bummed me out. It was so great. I was like, oh. He's like, you're good. It's like, I'm gonna watch out for you now, and I'm like, oh.
Let's check with the chat a little bit.
Like Jersey is faints, by the way. Faint. I don't know why there's a code. I mean, I guess it's good. Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that went with like super obvious codes after that.
Sure. Yeah.
But Mark Henry was crazy, man. Everyone talked about how he changed the codes all the time.
My favorite this is an old school one, was Mark Lehman. Do you remember Mark Lehman? He used to be in the corner for like Johnny Hendricks. Come on, Johnny! He was like super like emotional, like it sounded like Johnny Hendricks was gonna die getting triangle choked in the WEC. But he would use like if you want a guy to go to crucifix from side control, he'd go, "Not Hughes, BJ Penn too." He would just yell fights, and like you would, oh yeah, I get what he's saying, yeah. Like that was all his code. God. Because
That's
it's like he would
great,
reference
man.
fights. It was great. So like you almost have to like have like I'd be like, oh, too bad I suck at fighting because I'd be like his perfect student because I'm like a reference nerd.
You
Like too
could
bad I
get all the
suck.
reference. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like his most coachable athlete, except I'm not an athlete.
Uh, and if we're going to talk about like crazy corner work, we gotta mention old school Henry Hooft, when he used to break his own fighters.
Yes,
Don't give up! Don't give up!
Don't quit. Come on. What's the rumble line now? What's the rumble line now? I used to make this hypothetical. Oh, I got to give this to John Anik for Ray Longo. But there's kind of it wouldn't work because Ray Longo fits the category. But my thing is like, Feño, you can have sex with any girl you want, and like you're in a relationship. You get a hall pass, even right. Let's get real deep into the hypothetical. Too good to be true. But here's the catch. Here's the catch. Is you have to pick one MMA coach who is always going to be in the room with you every time you have to have sex, shouting instructions. So back to what I said, it's like, do you want the more like caring Greg Jackson? You know, like good, yes, good. It's okay that use it, use it. Or do you want like Henry go, don't quit, come on, West Feño, I know, stand strong. You're like I'm losing it. Stop yelling at me, Henry.
Oh
stand strong. You're like I can't. You're yelling at me.
Oh yeah, Stitchface with Mark Lyman was the one that said Mayhem to use the R word strength against GSP.
Yes. Oh, great Stitchface, great references. Yes, that is Mark Lyman. Absolutely. Yep, Mark. He was like one of the guest coaches on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, is where he kind of got his claim. But he was an accomplished American jiu-jitsu guy.
But at the same time, I feel like people can go to the other extreme and get silly with the criticisms about corner work. Like corner work cannot be super specific, and sometimes like I don't know if people don't have friends because like sometimes you can't connect with a person without being like super specific. I remember when Cub Swanson fought Shane Burgos. His boxing coach, who is a very high level boxing coach, by the way, the Cubs, he was telling him stay athletic, and so a lot of people got mad at that, like, oh, that's so stupid. And it's like, it's not hard to understand. Like he's telling him to like stay bouncy, stay mobile. It's I didn't think it was bad advice, but I remember a lot of people on Twitter like, oh, look at this dumbass saying him to stay athletic. What do you want him to be not athletic?
So no, totally. Like I hate when they gaslight the corners for like I think bad corner work is both subtle and obvious at the same time. But I hate when they gaslight the tropes for bad corner work when it's just a trope where it's one that especially when it's like the former fighters on commentary. It's our comments like, you guys should know better than anybody that like, of course he's not winning, but he's got to tell him something, you know, like, and that's just. And even if you don't agree with that form of coaching, that just might be what the fighter responds to, you know? And even if it's not.
Some guys, some guys panic when feel they're down. So if you're telling them that they're winning, and at the same time, like some fighters, if you tell them to go for the finish, they will go crazy. So you better just tell them to try to win the round. So it's
it's overly critical. One thing I was always curious on why I don't hear more, and I only say this as somebody who's cornered, I don't know, and then not even that recently now, it was like 2022 was the last time I cornered Oscar Willis, but like in that fight, for example, you're not just wanting to yell because I know I'm going to be in earshot of the ref, but you want to yell instructions, and like sometimes it's like they're yelling bad instructions or almost too specific, and I feel like, especially knowing me, I'm like, well, I'm definitely more geared to fucking talk too much or be too specific. So I want to not do that. So instead of saying like elbow or frame an elbow or punch here, I would just say score when we're in the clinch, score. Every time
that's a good shout.
Like, no, we're scoring here, score, and then it would translate to the fighter. And even if it was a weak ass shot, I would react like it was score. Because the refs hearing like, oh, the corner's wanting the fighter to score. Oh, he's scoring. He's scoring, because that's what you should be thinking about. Like, especially,
I've heard lately inside the clinch, and I feel like it's actually good. Some people I probably get mad at in the clinch and from like close guard. Like we need damage. I feel like that's good advice, actually. Like
Yeah, because it's a trigger word, whether it's score or damage, and it makes them think instead of like worrying about whatever they're because what if their train of thought was, and maybe it's not as efficient, but it's like I want to try to punch around the guard rather than frame an elbow and drop my weight on them, right?
yeah,
Maybe it's something not as efficient or as damaging as a frame and elbow, but you tell them to do that. Now they're having to wait. What? I'm having to break it. What he wants me to, and you're losing time off the clock. They're making them freeze.
yeah,
But
exactly.
you let them like a kid, like as a teacher, like even though you're cornering and coaching can be two different things, but like you're almost channeling more into the teaching and the coaching side where you're like, okay, you're the artist. You need to do the brush stroke in your own way. I'm just telling you which direction to swim in. You know, how whatever stroke you want to use it, but go that way. That's the direction. And yeah, you're just reminding them to stay busy, and that's just such a huge thing because, and granted, a lot of times, especially if you're degenerate like me, maybe you bet on a fight. There's so many times where you're like, you're doing the score in your head because you're extra invested for your fighter to win, right? And you're almost acting as a corner, like, come on, just seal it. I think a couple more elbows would seal. Like, how many times have you said that to yourself in your head for a fighter you're rooting for, right?
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
just one of those things, There was a good Ghost Phantom question. I hope you get to in your chat, Feño.
Which one? Oh,
I think it was
the
about
Amp Trap by BA10, man. Man, I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff that BA used to do like that didn't catch on. I like on the ground, wrestling wise too.
Yeah, he did a lot. I mean, he did the Khabib meta, before Khabib and stuff. And granted, he was an AKA guy for a brief period of time. People forget that, I think, too. Like even when John Fitch went against BJ Penn back at UFC 127, DC, who wasn't even in the UFC back then, was in Fitch's corner. And he was like, John, BJ can wrestle, man. Don't underestimate. I know he's a little chubby lightweight. He can.
That
and
was
who fucks Fitch up?
That was
Like
an
the first round.
That was an insane decision by BA to go like, I'm going to out wrestle John Fitch on the first round.
Yeah,
he kind of did it, which is like the craziest shit.
It was like a pride thing where it's like, see, when I'm fresh, I can kick your ass. Like it was like the classic BJ Penn.
It was like,
I'm
okay, I'm going to get tired. You can lay on me, but I'm going to show you who's daddy on the first round.
Well, it made the mistake that like we later saw that Eric Silva, that great fight with Eric Silva and John Fitch, which one of John Fitch's only entertaining fights, right? But you can't go for that guy's back; he will spin out of it, and get on top of you. That was his move. But the arm trap, though, I'm surprised because I'm not too up with competition jiu-jitsu, but when from post-pandemic on, when working with my jiu-jitsu coach, who is more on tune to that, he's a 10th Planet black belt as well as a black belt under the late Robert Follis at Extreme Couture. He goes back and forth between both gyms. And he teaches a lot of arm trapping and like showing the newer meta of it, which is, I'm more surprised people don't do it because I've seen more effective ones where BJ would do it from like, just a regular mount, kind of trapping an arm to its side here, right? And sometimes you'll see guys maybe accidentally get it and they'll even maybe get the triangle, right? But it's kind of the same. It's the same thing. We're just trapping here. Now there's a setup. Now we do it from wrist feeds, which again, not enough wrist feeds and whatnot. But so if you're behind somebody, someone's behind me, let's say their arm is coming through. It's coming through. Yeah, if they want to get this wrist here, it's going to come through the opposite armpit, and they're going to grab here, right? And that's a wrist feed, right? So now they've got it sucked in. You can have it from a standing position, a rear waist cinch. You don't have to necessarily have the back. But if you have the back and you're able to kind of wrist feed and trap this arm, it opens, it makes it vulnerable for your leg to then come up. You kind of start digging your heel in, the old BJ Penn dexterity, right? You dig the heel in here.
Poisonous area right there.
Yeah, but except now the way they teach it is you dig all the way. And I've even hit this with wrestling shoes on. And it's still like in a no gi, but it's really more effective where before they're just trapping. As you can see on the camera, just flat arm is my arm is just kind of, running parallel down by my rib cage. But this one, when you really dig your heel, you almost want to dig your heel into the bicep, between the bicep and the ribs, and almost get it to where you're foot pierces between the arm and body, obviously, but the instep of your foot is almost like wrapping between their ribs, and it pushes their arm almost behind their back, as you can see here,
Oh
and
yeah.
it pins it that way. So instead of just here where you can kind of maybe still get out and wiggle free, this really has it. And it's really hard to demonstrate. You really got to see it. But they have, what I'm essentially trying to say is there's even more effective arm pins out there. So, which to Ghost's question, I think it's a good question, is with so much advances in the weaponry, even more of a reason, like, yeah, why aren't we seeing it more?
Yeah, but it also like, it also is like BJ like had very good technique with trapping the arm from the back because like that's that for other people like that's a way of defense that is actually as a novice grappler, something that I used to do a lot was like putting myself inside the hook so I can like take the leg here to the shoulder and I can open up and I can spin around. So
yes, scramble. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you and then they're trying to like go for impromptu triangles that they're never gonna get to try to recover.
And you end that on top anyway.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there's that's why I guess maybe that's why my coach is maybe teaching it to us from a wrist feed position, right? A point of control. So you're at that point you're the proper chest to back, so to speak. You know, you're still at your proper rear naked choke finishing position. But yeah, we go for the wrist feed. It was like a whole process, and then you slip your heel in between the rib and the arm, and their arm ends up pins like this. And then you have your two arms free to work the choke and try to finish there.
The one that I'm kind of surprised that we don't see more often too is like because this one like works more in MMA than in actual grappling. It's like when the guy on top, like you're trying to get the back and you like proactively go for Kimura traps to take the back. We mostly see like Kimura trapping when the guy is like defending. So you get on my back and I go for the Kimura and I try to take the back from there. But if you're like, for example, a standing clinch and you can go for Kimura from when you're behind the other guy, when you're the guy attacking, and then you can create a space with the Kimura, and we don't see that a lot. We've seen from a few like high level guys, but I feel like it's not that complicated, and we see a lot of Kimura right now, so it's like I feel like
sorry to cut you off. I was going to say, if anybody's going to do that, and you don't want to hear this, but it's going to be Paddy Pimblett because he loves the Sakuraba catch. You know.
Yeah. Paddy actually has some very cool looks on the ground, man.
And by the way, what you're explaining, by the way, go back and watch. Remember GSP Carl Parisian, GSP's first UFC fight it was against Carl Parisian.
Okay.
And Carl he uses that same setup you said, but they do it from the turtle.
Oh, okay, yeah.
GSP. Remember that cool? But he used kind of your principle.
Insane scrambles in that one, man.
Yeah. People go watch that fight if you have. I know a lot of you have. A lot of you are real ones. So I'm just preaching to the choir to the chat. But
okay, let's get back to the chat because there's a
homies.
lot.
I know I'm seeing the homies there.
Yeah. Shout out JP Ford, man. I don't think I got the Charles Johnson gig. Probably not, but thank you, man. We have Luca Guariento over here. We have Ghost talking about the corner advice when they told Mackenzie Dern faint and thug life.
Thug life, yeah, that was bad. See, that was deservedly bad. Yeah, that
was the bad version of the Stay Athletic that they talk of. Hey Arman, what's up? Synchro Wing. He has a question. We will be answering the Twitter questions in a bit. We're just freestyling for a little bit, but we'll get to your question, man. Body triangle is too strong in MMA right now. Man, body triangle is going crazy. But we're seeing more and more escapes. The Wu-Tang, man. I want to know your opinion on Dariush versus Islam. This week he said he will win against Islam in his fight instead of Moicano. I feel like people are like bashing Benil, and I feel like he matches pretty well with Islam. Actually,
me too. Yeah.
Not sure I would pick him, but like I said during that week, like Dariush way better fight for Islam than Moicano. Moicano is free money for Islam. I said that during that week. I said the
Yeah,
fight should have gone to Dariush.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think people forget too that Dariush and RDA were initially scheduled to fight Islam. Or if they do remember it, they remember that they were
Yeah.
like still like plus 400 or 500 odds. And dude, like especially as a gambler, like as an analyst, maybe I wouldn't pick against Islam in either of those fights. But you have to think this was like 4 or 5 years ago at least. This was the where we didn't see Islam's best performances yet. And technically, RDA and Dariush are both southpaw capable, not just jiu-jitsu guys, but MMA wrestlers, good striking. The southpaw versus southpaw dynamic fucks everything up,
Dariush obviously like not the physical force and not the striker that RDA is, but probably like pure wrestler, probably better, man.
Yeah, and speaking of bad optics or hard to judge, Dariush is probably another one of those guys because like from everything from the gray hair to like how he looks gassed,
he
looks like he's always
tired,
like hurt and gassed and like, but he's always like, what do you mean? I've got great cardio. And then when you go back and watch the fights, you're like, he didn't really ever slow down, win or lose, or as bad as he was never really like slow. Like, yeah, man, he just looks bad.
And the one thing that another thing that people don't remember is that, like, you cannot score like Khabib versus RDA for RDA, but it was close, especially that third round.
Yeah,
like RDA was looking like the fresher fighter, and he was putting the damage. I think like RDA took that third round, to be honest. Like Khabib was like doing a lot of trips inside the clinch and stuff, but he was not getting to his damaging the ground and pound positions in that fight against RDA.
Yeah, that was early Khabib where he wasn't getting guys control. Like, was like he was setting the takedown record, but it's like against like Abel Trujillo. But it's like, man, why are you having to take down 21 times? And anybody forget,
I feel like against Trujillo he was having fun with the mad returns, to be honest.
Yeah, and the Trio was an NAIA level wrestler, and he was using, and he was like, I remember he was one of the examples that gave me hope as an early Tony Ferguson truther back in the day, where I was like, oh, Abel Trujillo did never Granby rolls, and he Granby rolled out of a lot of the attempts. I'm like, imagine what Tony, this was like Tony right after he fought like Josh Thompson, right? Not too long after that fight, where he was like just like Granby rolling mid takedown, like where he was like Sonic the Hedgehog and cheat codes, as opposed to now where he's like a bag of bones Jones, like again another like it's like BJ Penn and these lightweight fighters, man, they don't age well. Like I talk about them like in their grand years, and then you look at like, ooh, in and out of the cage, these guys fucking.
And Josh Thompson, another one, man, he looked like trash against Tony Ferguson.
He did, and he was another guy where it was like he was like the uncrowned lightweight king. He had one of the best highlight knockouts, right? And like I still think even with one hand he beat Benson Henderson, especially under the older criteria where like takedowns and back takes and stuff were supposed to be worth more. Because like he broke his hand against that. It was like he broke his hand against Benson, but he kept doing the duck unders and getting to his back.
Yeah.
And like you could tell he couldn't finish anything because one of his hands was fucked up, but he was just doing what he can to sell the judges, and it still wasn't enough to get him to win. And then everybody was booing Benson. And then Benson proposed to his wife while everybody was booing.
Also like Thompson, one of the best fights against Nate Diaz that anyone has had. Like he beat him so clean.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, how many times have we seen that, Feño, where it's a split decision in a Benson fight, and then everybody's booing, and then they go to Benson. I just want to say one thing, and he thinks he's gonna talk about the fight, and he's just like, I can do the power of Christ, and then he does his pose, and then everybody's just like, boo. He's just so like, there's no awareness, there's no self-awareness of the boos. It's the best.
Remember when he proposed to his girlfriend and everyone was booing? That's what I'm saying.
It was the Josh Thompson fight. That was after the Josh Thompson fight because he got a bad decision. Everybody's booing.
It was that decision?
Yeah. That's why I was laughing. There was no self-awareness. Like he was like an actor. He's like, I have the script. It doesn't matter what the audience is doing. I'm gonna go hit my marks. And he just is so bad.
I feel like to be honest, I feel like Benson is like a fake cool guy. Like he's not actually like suave and shit like he pretends to be. He's like he's like this good. He's a good Christian boy, man. He doesn't read the room at all.
As a glasses wearing nerd, I can say that like you look at the early like footage of him and John Crouch. back in the day, like with John Kratz, that old viral clip, not viral, but it was like a memorable clip where it was like someone caught on camera after a practice where he goes, "Hey, Benson, hey, you're gonna be world champion one day. Look at me, you're gonna be world champion one day." And he's just like has these like he looks like the guy who never trained, like he's got like some long like board shorts, like basketball, not even board shorts, like basketball shorts. He's wearing like glasses, like a beat up like white t-shirt with like stains on it, and he's got his like long curly hair. And I'm like, and he just looks like the biggest nerd again. I like smell my own. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh my god, this guy. It was great. It's like the Johnny Hendricks photo between the Lawler fights where he got really big and out of shape from the
Oh, that was
surgery. And
so funny, man.
someone snapped a photo of him in a polo and glasses, and he just shaved, and it looked like didn't look like him. It just this is your world champion.
Every time I think about Fat Johnny Hendricks, I remember when he was saying that the journalists should have to make weight.
Yeah, you know what the ironic thing is so a lot of us, from the MMA Junkie Radio became big Johnny Hendricks fans because he was a big MMA Junkie Radio guy. Him and the whole team Takedown before they went out to Texas. They were out here in Vegas because Mark Lehman had his jiu-jitsu school. And when Johnny Hendricks would come on, we would try to give people like nicknames, and see if the fighters would take it. And like no one would take it. Like some of those is silly stuff. Like, yeah, Evan 3D Dunham. Come on, 3D Dunham. And it's like Evan's like, I don't know what to do with that. But the one they came up with for I don't even know. Oh, I remember because he was like, oh, one of my and this was like an early tell, right? This is before any of the weight stuff, right? Any of that like became ever an issue. Like this is WEC days, right? And we're like, Johnny Hendricks, he's like this. He said Wendy's was his favorite or something. So we're like, you should be the Baconator. And everyone would just call him Baconator. Like, yeah, Bacon. He's like, come on, guys, I don't want to be known for food. And this was like early in the day, so it was just like, how cruel is fate and the MMA gods? MMA gods like, oh, you don't want to be known for food? Oh, you're not gonna take the Baconator name? Well, you're gonna get a food nickname and a reputation, sir, whether you like it or not. He opens a steakhouse.
Johnny seemed like a cool guy, but he also he took himself way too seriously, man.
Yeah, he shot himself in the foot.
Like remember when Johnny said like, I don't allow kids to take photos with my belt. I work 20 years for this belt. I'm not going to allow any kid to take a photo with this belt. Yeah. Who cares, Johnny Hendricks? No one is going to believe that the kid is a fucking world champion.
And from all like the vibes you get from early, or especially early Johnny Hendricks, like the stories about wrestling, like he sounded like the biggest asshole to compete against. Like that's what his reputation was for. Like he was just when
he had his rivalry with Askren, like people hated Johnny. Everyone loved Ben Askren back in college.
Dude. So I don't know if people are asked about this, but like I don't know play into the headlines or whatever. But I got to admit, man, not only do I think it's a bad sign Topuria split with his gym, I'm just getting so many fucking red flags from that. And I love Topuria's style and everything, but like, do you think this is overblown, Feño, or are you getting red flags? And could we if we did see this, would it be the craziest example of this? But like, could we see another example of somebody where we're just like, holy shit, like nothing can stop this person, and whether it's fate or them shooting themselves in the foot or a mixture of both, there's a fucking major drop off, and maybe they recover from it, or maybe they don't, which is sometimes the case too. Like we've seen instances of this. Maybe they don't get the champion, or maybe they do get the champion, but they don't like completely finish 2 top pound for pound back to back like he did. But perhaps that's all the more reason for a bigger fall. Or am I just being fucking woo?
Might be something there, man. It's kind of scary, especially because of how long he has been with them, and you would think that those are the guys that design his style, right? So,
and we just talked about lightweight, right? I mean, how volatile it is. People don't age well, and for as much shit as we want to give Khabib or Islam or this or that, it's like, can we blame him for not wanting to stick around? Like, look, we've had some of the greatest fighters. Who was it? Was it you or Ryan Wegg that did the ratings of like pound for pound greats, and lightweight, which is no surprise, has like the most numbers of it. But again, you stick around, it's not to quote the Dark Knight or whatever, but you will become the villain. It'll it falls fast. We've seen that attitude, different versions of it, right?
Yeah, and
DJ,
you see
Tony,
with
Connor.
yeah, and you get the feeling that, like, for example, like Dustin is getting out now, but if he were to stick like 2 more years, it would look rough, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue he's lucky enough to have the longevity he's already had, but yeah, I
Yeah, for
agree.
sure. And I'm always scared when Charles Oliveira fights because I feel like he's going to fall
Ready.
off a cliff. He's going to
Yes.
fall off a cliff at any moment.
Yeah, and even with the speculation that I'm talking about, and it's very live in my mind, I still hate this fight. I still understand why he's a big underdog. And as much as my Do Bronx heads out there are like, fuck yeah, Do Bronx and another big dog odds, we ride again. I'm like, I don't know, man. Even with me being scared of this the Topuria injection that I'm injecting myself here, perhaps, stylistically, I can't look around this fight. I think it's a bad one for Charles.
Yeah, especially for like for old Charles in particular. Like you're
Yes.
you're telling me you're not scared that the guy that got hurt like on like the 4th or 5th round against Chandler, you're not scared of what's going to happen to him against Topuria? Like,
Yeah, with the guys who can actually finish on the floor, like
yeah,
Topuria or Makachev, when they get him hurt. Yeah, they're not afraid to follow him like Justin Gaethje was, and yeah, absolutely. But that's what makes it, really interesting with this whole move and right before the fight too. So I don't know, that worries the. And I'm not a big narrative guy, right? Like I really try to focus on the evidence and stuff like us analysts do, but like, oh, that one gives me the heebie-jeebies. I got bad red flags from that, man.
I really wanted to see Holloway versus Charles, man.
Oh yeah, the rematch from
That's the
Saskatoon.
fight. The rematch
Dude,
after the dog
be 10 years.
came back with nothing.
It would have been 10 years this August.
Oh yeah?
You know how I know that? Because UFC Saskatoon was the first fight that I broke down over on mixedmartialanalyst.com. The first fight Dan Tom broke down publicly ever. That's why this August is big, dude. It marks 10 years of starting Mixed Martial Analysts. I also got hired on a junkie for the McGregor-Mayweather fight. So that was August 2017, right? So that's going to be, what, 8 years with junkie? And then my ass is turning 40 in August as well, bro. I'm fucking freaking out. August is coming. August is coming.
Man.
Ah!
Here in Chile, August is like the coldest month because we are in the South Hemisphere, so it's winter here. So when you see like an old person after in like early September, you always tell to them like, "Oh, you survived August."
That's hilarious. Oh man.
It's like, "Oh, August didn't kill you. That's good for you."
So don't come visit you for my birthday then. It's not a good time.
We'll see. It's summer over there, so.
I was hoping you're gonna say there was a special tradition when you turn 40 in Chile where like you get like free shit or something. I'm coming. I'm going. Show my ID. It's my birthday.
Oh, I hope, really, man. I'm getting close too.
I don't know if I'll be able to get back into my country, especially coming back from anywhere south of the border. They freak out over here. They're gonna see my skin and be like, I don't know. I'm like, use my passport. They're like, I don't know.
The rules have changed, man.
Yeah, dude.
It's crazy because I always wanted to go to the US, like especially because now I have buddies like you over there, but now it's kind of scary.
Yeah, no. In all seriousness, I'd rather come to you, and I mean, I definitely would rather get out. I don't know. We'll see. Any homies in the chat from Australia or New Zealand? That might be a cheaper getaway for me because my cousin needs like some standby tickets.
We should meet over in Australia. I mean, me and Dan Tom.
There we go. But yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do for August, man. We'll see. I'm fucking scared.
Okay,
you're not too far behind me. You look young too. You're not too far behind me, bro.
Let's get into the questions because I ended up never recording.
Sorry, I'm distracting Feño, guys.
No. I said that we were going to freestyle a little bit, and then we were going to get to the questions. So Um, let me check. Let me
Yeah,
check.
StreamYard's being kind for me for once, Ghost. It's letting me actually use my. This is the first time StreamYard is letting me use my air quote good camera, Ghost. So I'm starting to change my mind. I'm coming around on the StreamYard. But yeah,
Okay.
used it today.
Okay, we have the first question by Dan Albert. I'm reading the Twitter questions. He says, "Why did Francis Ngannou clothesline, aka Bass Rotten tribute, never catch on as a new meta?" And yeah, after that, he says, "Actually serious. Are there particular trends in a certain archetype that's developed in the last few years? For example, for me, there's been a greater shift towards control and neutralization. I feel like more than control and neutralization, I've seen a trend towards like um, activity over a meaningful volume. I don't know if you agree with that.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
in varying degrees and from very different fighters. We've seen that, and I feel like that's a kind of dangerous trend that it's not going to last very long, even though it's being very successful right now. When I talk about that, I'm talking about like Merab, like Bilal, and like Ian Gary, to give like three examples of fighters that do different stuff. All of them are like very different, but all of them like prioritize being very active during rounds, having that big volume edge that even if you're not having like the best connections of the round, you're getting on like on bulk, you're winning the round. And what I think it's dangerous about that, and you can see in fights from all three fighters, is that if you're not going for like consistent damage and you're not building on your offense, your opponent will be there until the end of the fight, and they might be able to finish you. And we saw that. I mean, all of these three guys won those fights, but we saw that Merab getting hurt on the fifth round against Shan O'Malley. We saw Merab uh, being reversed on the ground, elbowed to a bloody mess by Leon Edwards. And we saw Ian Gary against Carlos Prates, also almost getting finished because Prates was tired, but he was not damaged by the offense of Ian Gary. So I feel like that's the double-edged sword about going for pace over like meaningful offense. Like, yeah, you're winning on the eyes of the judges, but you gotta remember that this is a fight. It's always safer to put on damage on your opponent. So
Yeah.
what are your take on that?
I think there's two great points. So off yours, I think what yours speaks to is that's very true. And again, whether you're heavily invested from like you're a coach, you're a big fan, or a degenerate gambler, there's how many times you're like, oh man, you got him to the ground, but you didn't get the finish, and there's either two more rounds or there's four more rounds if it's a 5-round fight, and it's like you're like, man, you're gonna regret not doing more damage with the time you had.
Yeah,
To your point, and I think that speaks louder to the fact that I don't, clinch striking could always be more, but I think mainly the bigger disparity there, because there are some cool clinch strikers, and there's at least people to doing what you said, Feño, where if they're not good clinch strikers, they're at least getting smarter with their activity, even if it's not as effective or impactful as you'd like. But it's the lack of ground and pound. I thought that really just the lost art. I was thinking this week of, and there's still time. I'm not trying to stress myself out, but I was going to try to, I had on my list. I'm like, what are some of the lists that I've already done a top 5 show that I can transfer to a list for Junkies evergreen top 5 stuff that I work on over there, right? And I was like, oh, top 5 ground and pound would be an easy lift
that's a
because
good one, man.
I already have a list. I haven't even gone to look back at it yet to see what it is, but I can tell you this, Feño. I mean, you tell me because, and you guys know me. I'm not trying. I'm an over preparer, so I don't mean to come off lazy. It's not what I mean to do, but I'm just being honest. My initial reaction is, oh, sweet. I won't need to do much research from that list to now because there's no good ground and pound that I can think of outside of maybe like Steve Garcia, who I already highlighted as my under the radar fighter, like, and he's a cream machine. It's such a weird reference, but like, there's not a, first of all, am I wrong? Before I get to that guy's question, is that off there? Me saying that, Feño?
No, for sure.
There's
I
not a
feel
lot of
like
that.
there's very few fighters with good ground pound nowadays in MMA. Yeah, I feel like you're actually right.
It's
Um,
yeah,
for example, and one of them, for example, Volkanovski is not a super consistent wrestler at the high level, so
mhm.
we don't get to see him match from top position. Um, and there's
And
like Islam is very good too, but he also
yeah,
has like the transitions and the submissions, so it doesn't get highlight as often. Uh, but
yeah.
but other than that, we don't see a lot.
No, I mean like Taporia had glimpses against Bryce Mitchell, and
Yeah,
very
yeah,
briefly from what I
he looked
recall.
nasty at times there. Yeah,
Yeah, if like that's what he wanted to do without gas tank preservation, you wonder what he could do there. But yeah, I don't think it's that strong. And back to his again, as far as archetype goes, it's a hard question. I probably would pigeonhole the same answer that the person who submitted the question is, which is it is neutralization, right? As far as
yeah.
trends
Especially
go,
when it comes to the clinician and the ground, I feel like there's a lot of that. Yeah,
and one tactic that I am seeing, and I joke about this with my friends because I see it from everywhere from the practice room to the pros. And before it was really rare. Like I always cite John Crouch MMA Lab. They're one of the only camps that would do it. Where the answer is hand fighting in general. There's more hand fighting, but especially the cross wrist to get up. People understanding the cross wrist, which is
yeah,
reaching across. It's not, if I'm standing in front of Feño, if I were to mirror grip, I would grab, and if I wanted to grab Feño's left wrist in a mirror grip, the easiest path you would think, well, my right hand would reach out and grab his left because we're facing each other, right?
yeah,
So when you cross grip, well, I would use my left hand to grab Feño's left wrist, which means you're reaching across to do
across.
that
Yeah,
action. And that creates a space, that creates a frame, that creates a fulcrum naturally and organically you can use to get up, and maybe you have the fence to your one side, so you cross wrist away from the fence, and you use, your right side or the left side, whichever, to the fence, so they don't hop around you. I always post this example of like, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann, their first fight. It's a great example where
oh yeah,
Anthony Smith uses a 2-on-1 grip to get up. Again, hand fighting, he uses it to get up, and but you can still, especially if the guy has long arms, or if he doesn't, it can work against you because when Ryan Spann went to use the 2-on-1 to get up, he didn't pin the wrist to the floor, right? And 2-on-1 with the cross wrist, you create kind of natural space there. 2-on-1, you're sacrificing space for a stronger grip because you're using 2-on-1 as opposed to a 1-on-1, which is a cross grip. But the trick is since you're sacrificing space, you got to pin it to the floor and then get your ass into TKO and Derek Lewis up, because that little, if you don't pin them to the floor with it, then they can just circle around to your back, which is exactly what Anthony Smith did to Ryan Spann in that first fight. So it's a really good risk, but I'm just seeing risk control in general, which is not an answer to the question, right? Because he asked archetype, but a tactic within that, and that relates to that answer as far as neutralization is probably the number one. It's risk control. It really kills everything. Seeing much more risk control.
and but at the same time, it's funny because we have seen a lot of that, but also on the other end of the spectrum, we are seeing like more combination boxing that it was like taking a while to get to MMA in the way that it's now.
Yeah.
But now we
Yeah.
have a lot of guys right now, like it's not only Topuria, it's like we have
Ribovich,
quite a
baby. Our
few
boy. Our
combinations.
boy Ribovich.
We have Rivo, man, and we have Vallejos too from Argentina too now. Like,
Vallejos, yeah.
yeah, and there's like Joshua Ban.
And
Um,
yeah.
and we had like Peter Yan is a different style of punching because he comes from like that Russian school that it has some jank to it, but there's the
Yeah, I love his in my I keep thinking Peter Young, my coach, is doing this more because I can't really throw my right hand, so we've been doing a lot of elbows. So a lot of the combos we've been doing have been from hand grab resets.
okay,
And I'm like, and I'm in that, I get caught up in that, like, oh, I'm not like super short. I'm 5'9", but I'm guessing my reach no bigger than 69 inches, probably 68 inches, right? Like I'm very like 2008 lightweight, right? Build, right? 5'9", 68 inch reach, right? Like, so but you forget, like, oh yeah, like Peter Yan's he's not big. He's not even big for his weight class, You don't have to be a long boy to do hand traps and getting in. It actually can work for the shorter guys and stuff. So I've really been looking at Peter Yan style a lot more lately because I've been working a lot of those hand traps. But again, back to hand fighting becoming more of becoming more of the meta. You posted some really great JDM clips that I showed my striking coach actually.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, he even if he's not doing it, if you touch him, whether he's working off a collar tie or I love where he goes collar tie, fold to elbow, or works off your own collar tie and then folds over that.
Yeah.
Guys are just
great.
much better with grips now and much more awareness with their hands.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Melo asks, are there any situations where it might be beneficial to not cut the cage when you're pressuring someone? Obviously, a lot of gyms simply don't teach it, but it feels like fighters also don't enjoy situations it might create. I think RDAs versus Eddie. I feel like if you're actually pressuring, you always want your opponent against the fence. But sometimes you, as a pressure fighter, might not want to go into like actual pressure, if that makes sense. For example, I feel like that's actually a good point. Like the example that there is great that RDA obviously he needed to play his pressure game against Eddie, but he was playing into Eddie's hands at the same time. And we've seen like Eddie like come out victorious against some of the most ferocious pressure fighters in the sport, both RDA and Justin Gaethje. And I'm not sure if there's like a situation where you don't want the pressure, but at the same time, I can imagine situations where you might not want to pressure certain guys, especially if they can like outposition you with their outside movement. There's also like what I describe as like pace fighters that they just want to like be in exchanges. They are not super concerned about defense. The two that most came to mind are like Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz. Like Nate is decent against the cage, but he's not Nick Diaz. Like Nick Diaz would piece you up against the fence.
Yeah.
Nate is a lot more like janky and he falls into clinches in there and he's not as damaging there. I feel like Nate is at his best when he's like putting volume in open space. And that's why he was never as good at cutting the cage because he's a lot more confident in just like landing the jab, make you move. Sean Strickland is the same. Sean Strickland, not great at cutting the cage, but very good at maintaining pace, even though he's following you around.
Yeah, even in the highlights. Sorry, real quick, the Nate Diaz and Gray Maynard 3 finish, right? I was there for that one. But even that finish, if you look at it, Gray is falling away. He's falling out to open space. Like Nate's almost like chasing him with the left cross, punching across his body almost.
Yeah.
To your point.
But yeah, you can see that Nate was like, he was putting a nice combination on Gray on that finish.
Yeah, sure,
you can see that he's not like keeping him there in the way that Nick used to keep guys there for the finishing combinations. And if you remember all the classic, like except like the Paul Daly because that was on the counter, but like all the classic Nick Diaz finishes in Strikeforce, guys end up like slumped against the fence. Like,
Jesus, most of Dan Tom's hype videos to go train around 2010 to 2012 was like all some type of Nick Diaz edits. So believe me, it was a bunch of the Rage Against the Machine beats. They're using the Nick Diaz body, the double up levering hooks, the body head ones, and they keep replaying those to hit the beats of the song. Like Nick Diaz was like a highlight reel editor's dream, in that sense.
Yeah, it was so good, man.
No,
there are guys that. But go on.
I was just gonna say, another example that comes to mind, I think, is and this is more of a gamble because it's something that I'm actually trying to train out of myself, and I wonder if it's a certain style thing because you see it from traditional martial artists to Pettis to Wushu Sanda guys with a lot of side kicks and spins like Fiziev, where you'll hear that term where it's like, oh, in Muay Thai where it's like kick the trail leg, so like it's okay if they're which means like you're accepting that the exchange is being fleed from you, but you're going to score from it. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, at least you're aware of it and you're using it. You're getting something from it. And a lot of times what I notice is that, especially like southpaw as well, open stance, you're like trying to go off to the far side. And when you get someone off to, which is fine, but you do that too much, you can, be like Aldana versus home, and you're running yourself in a complete circle looking like an idiot. There's that extreme
Yeah.
version. Or there's the version where you're doing it like measured, but where it really starts to fall apart on you is when you get someone to the fence. And
Yeah.
now you're not cage cutting, you're like you're trailing off. And you have all these weapons from like, oh, I have like Mike Tyson shifting hooks to the body. I can get my left as I trail off to the body. Or if I miss my left, I could spin and spin kick them. And if that spin kick miss, it'll hit the cage and I can counterbalance off. And I'm still okay. And you think of all this like, and it sounds silly, but look at Anthony Pettis, right? He's doing sillier shit than that. He's doing the Showtime kick, right?
Yeah.
Or
the Showtime knee that he hit on Cowboy too.
Right. Or, a more realistic version of this against, an even more skilled striker. You look at Fizzy versus Brad Riddell, and he lets Brad Riddell circle off into the spin kick, which is a real one us traditional guys love, right? And Fizzy doesn't come from traditional martial arts like Valentina, but he does come from the Wushu Sanda base, which is a lot of, point fighting, side kicks, spins, spin counters, right? So
and it's interesting because in Sanda they mostly fight out in an open mat.
Yeah. So, but it's risky, but it's like what your brain is programmed for. Like, like I remember, because like you would do open mat point karate, but there would be kind of a ring there where they kind of have to respect. So if I got a guy into a corner, I remember I don't even think it was that fancy move. It was probably like a lancing inside kick, but it was so from far out of range they were able to sidestep to my weak side. But they sidestepping to my weak side, we were really far off to the right corner, so they kind of sidestepped to my weak side, but they also put themselves in a corner, and they were like right behind me. And there's no grappling, so I remember I just go boom, and I did the counterbalance. That like the Johnny Walker got a knockout this way, right? And it was one of the Johnny Walker knockouts I'll actually defend. I'm like, no, that's the counterbalance, and you have to recover your balance from a side kick or a spin side kick. And you sometimes the best way to recover it is like a spinning elbow or spinning back fist. And I knocked the kid's freaking helmet, like turned like to where the helmet was like. I hit him so good, I was like, yeah. And and it was a stop point, and it wasn't a real fight, it was point karate, but it still felt badass. I was like, oh, sweet. But like, yeah, like it's just this habit you feel you fall into, but then when you're going against actual fight environments against actual fighters, it's like, oh yeah, cutting the cage is a good thing. And that's another thing, my coach is working with me on, where he'll kind of do it silently, where he'll kind of just go off to the side and kind of look at me like, you're letting me go, you're really gonna let me get this far out, I'm like, oh yeah, let me stay in front of you. Like, it's harder than it looks, but I can tell you that like there is a natural ingrainment for certain styles to allow them to trail out. I don't know, I don't think it's smart.
Yeah, actually taking it back to guys not wanting it against the fence, like you go back to like Shogun versus Machida, and that was what Shogun was doing. He wanted to pressure, but he wanted to pressure in open space so he could create those like trailing leg situations.
Yeah,
but he actually never tried to put like Machida against the fence, probably because he was scared of the counters. So he was like, okay, let's face it in open space where I know you're going to push back. And when you do that, I'm going to kick your leg. I'm going to kick your body.
Great example. Yep, great example.
Okay, let's get back to another question. Joanna asked, Topuria versus a prime version of all the previous featherweight champions. How would you expect each fight to go? Okay, let's go like super quick. Topuria versus Aldo. I hate to be like the super Aldo fanboy, but I feel like if anyone has the tools, it's probably Aldo, especially with leg kicks. I feel those would be like concerning for Topuria. The defense would be a problem for Topuria. Topuria obviously would be dangerous inside the pocket against Aldo, but Aldo, I would say superior defense, but obviously Topuria the more dangerous puncher of the two. But if you add like Aldo is a guy that probably is going to win the jabbing battle there, and not a lot of people can say that against Topuria. And plus the leg kicks, I gotta give a slight edge to Aldo, I think. What do you think?
So Prime Aldo, it really comes down to how effective the leg kicks are. Because
Yeah,
if he can't slow him down with the leg kicks, I honestly think we get a Mendez Aldo 2 situation, where it's a really good fight. But I could honestly see Taporia having the bigger moments. Again, not if
yeah,
he's getting crippled by leg kicks, but if the leg kicks aren't showing noticeable effect and really, because you got to draw it out in crayon for the judges, right? If it's not a headshot, I think Taporia takes it on the bigger moments. But it's like a Mendez Aldo. It's like a good showing for both.
yeah. But it looks close. It looks very close. I feel like Aldo is
Yeah.
usually very strong. 1v1, but this one is close. Connor, how do you feel about the Connor matchup?
The Conor matchup.
Topuria versus Connor.
Um, hmm. This one's interesting.
Yeah,
I
I would
still
have to think
I go
about it.
Taporia because of the grappling. But the interesting part though is because I think same with Makachev. I think maybe not Makachev. That's why I like Makachev, I should say, is because I think Southpaws is going to be a problem for Taporia.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
Connor, not just in his prime with his left hand, but people forget like he was a good kicker for a little bit of a stretch there too. Um,
Yeah,
Especially because he wasn't, his big criticism was the lack of the lead hand. He was disguising it a lot more back then with his kicks. And like you look at, and he knew when to kick too. So when he had a squat guy who would crouch into his right, like Dennis Seaver, it was a field day for.
yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
I would pick Taporia, but I would really respect Connor's chances and make sure to point that dynamic out.
Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't say that Topuria is a better version of Chad Mendes because they have some clear differences.
Sure.
But what Topuria has is a top game. Yeah, that's something that Chad
Yes.
never really
Yeah.
had. So, but it's that one is interesting. I would not be like super surprised to see like Connor like catching him with a left or a left kick.
Mhm.
But if we gotta go one way or the other, and against Holloway we already saw, and against Volkanovski we already saw as well.
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's insane that Topuria with his level of experience, like you even talk about hypotheticals about him in this way. He's just so good, man.
Well, I hope he doesn't follow Connor too much. These guys follow
Yeah.
each other. Like Connor followed BJ. What people don't realize that or not. In a lot of ways, from the two titles, the boxing talk, the moving up in weight to outside
Yeah.
of the
It's,
fucking
it's a
ring
lot
shenanigans.
of
Like
BA, yeah.
he really
I
followed
was
the fucking
I was
the
about
character
to say
arc.
like if BA if the UFC had the matchmaking and like a brand behind it that it has now, they would have made BJ a 3 weight class champion back in the day, man.
I mean, he was averaging more pay-per-views before social media than these guys now.
Yeah.
He wasn't a Brock Lesnar or Rampage number guy, but he was the steady second tier where he came in averaging
Yep.
400K buys, pay-per-view buys, which are all going to be numbers of the past. People are going to have no context of these numbers anymore, if not already, right? Because of the model
400
of what
is
ESPN did. But
400 is what Pereira is doing nowadays, and Pereira is huge. Like,
yeah, he's and had the machine behind him.
yep. Okay,
Yeah.
next question. Sabertooth Mommy asks, is Pocket Boxer a useful style description, or is it entirely encompassed by the infighter archetype? Matt Brown is an infighter, but I
Mm.
wouldn't describe him as a pocket boxer. The pocket is a rare place for an MMA fight compared to boxing, with the clinch right there. Yeah, I feel like there's a clear distinction.
Yeah.
I feel like infighting obviously covers both the pocket boxing and the clinch, but obviously there's a separation between uh, one and the other. And being good at the clinch doesn't mean you're a good pocket boxer, and vice versa too. So I feel like there's a valid differentiation that you can do there.
Yeah, it's a completely valid term, but it's like this. Like, you guys are familiar with my breakdown formats, right? Like, I got the basic information, their height, and one of the columns I put stance and style, right? Southpaw,
Yeah,
orthodox, switch stance. That's a little easier to do, if they mainly fight orthodox, so they mainly fight like I list Dustin as, even though Dustin switches, I list him as a southpaw because he primarily
Yeah,
fights southpaw. So you can kind of understand that distinction, right? Now, I used to put like karate, kickboxing, Muay Thai, boxing
yeah. I
as the
remember that you
styles.
used to do that. Yeah,
But now, if you notice, I only use Muay Thai or kickboxing because I feel like, and again, it's not because karate's not a valid term or boxing's not a valid term, right? But it's like I also feel like I don't necessarily need to use it. So it's not a valid term, but it's also not necessary. So like a pocket boxer versus an infighter, even though infighting is a boxing term as well, right?
yeah,
Maybe I would use pocket boxing for a guy mainly using fist punches for his inside fighting, right? Whereas a
yeah,
guy that's like using like Pantoja, he's like crafty with his knees and elbows in there too. I'd be like, this guy's, got a good clinch game, or he's a good infight. Maybe an infighter would be a more covering term there than pocket boxer for Pantoja, right? So you get real technical with it. So to avoid that, whether it's me doing it or someone doing it to me, or me worried about someone doing it to me, I'm like, let me just use the simplest simplification, And even if a guy's more of a karate style, like a Stephen Thompson or a Michael Page, I'm putting them as kickboxer, right? Because they competed in kickboxing before.
yeah.
The kicking and punching is
That's
probably what the
valid.
close.
Yeah,
Even though not that Stephen Thompson can't use an elbow, and we obviously Michael Page can use a knee, I wouldn't consider them Muay Thai, right? Where I say Muay Thai for guys that I think and I get it, right? It's a real temptation to do and we're smarter than this. The boys in the chat are smarter than this. We know Muay Thai people have footwork. We know that's a myth, right? So I think people would assume that, like, oh, if someone's more plotty, you give them Muay Thai. I'm like, no, that's not why I give them Muay Thai. It's if they're using more elbows and knees, or they come from an actual like a Muay Thai, a coach, they're a Cordero guy, and they're using all the, then maybe I'll use Muay Thai more. It depends. It's one of those things. So it's like you can get
yeah.
really
It's
in the weeds with it if you want to, but I just try to make it as simple as possible for me.
yeah. It's funny because I was. Oh, when it comes to, I know we stray from the question, but still, it's an interesting topic. Because I was thinking about like fighters who use like Muay Thai parent stance in MMA. There's not a lot actually.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about making a video about that. I like who came to mind like immediately. It was like Shogun against Machida. He was like very very light on his lead leg. Then we had like Jojo Caldergood. We had
Yeah.
Valentina. And people get mad, but Valentina obviously like she has like that taekwondo background, but I say and people get mad, but Valentina actually fights like very close to a traditional Muay Thai style. Like
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Her pace to her slide backs, her responses for range.
yeah,
It's very yeah, no, absolutely very Muay Thai. And as much as I make fun of this fighter, my brain works the same way where shout out to Mom Champ, Michelle Watterson, where when she's southpaw, like all her traditional martial arts style comes out. And then when she does
yeah,
orthodox, she's like pure Muay Thai. Like it's like complete style. Like her
yeah,
brain, you can
yeah.
see how her brain changes.
And and there are fighters that have a lot of actual Muay Thai influence, but don't have like the stance. Uh, for example, Matt Brown doesn't really has like a super Muay Thai stance.
Yeah, but
More
I
of
put
a
him as Muay Thai, but I
yeah,
classify him
no,
as Muay Thai.
exactly,
Yeah,
because like obviously he goes for a bunch of elbows and knees, and
yeah,
he kicks very Thai style,
yep.
but he has like this hunch, like more of a boxing stance, like. And
One of
also
the guy,
another guy, Masvidal too, when he was in his prime, like not
yeah,
a he would go sometimes more like, especially against Cerrone, he did more of a Muay Thai stance,
yeah, yeah.
but a lot of the time he was like bouncing with the high guard here, and but then he would like kick very Thai style, and he has like a lot of tricks inside the clinch, even though he's a very good boxer too. So, but it's a bit interesting topic.
Brad Katona's low key been like getting more Muay Thai style
Oh
as
yeah, a lot
well.
of elbows
His up
lately by
elbows, his like
Kachona,
up
yeah.
elbows, which is really underutilized. This is just like because it's defense, like insurance. It's like, well, I'm blocking if anything. If they don't run into it, fine, it's a block. I can move off it.
Hey,
Chamber
Dr.
off it.
Jones, what's up, man?
Dr. Jones, no time for love, Dr. Jones. No time for love.
Let's get into the next question. Any fighters you're looking forward to seeing in Road to UFC or Dana White Contender Series? I don't actually do any scouting or watch tape on the guys that are going to be on those. I just let them surprise me. To be honest, I watched too much tape already. So
Feño doesn't want to tell you guys, but he was also scouting for Carlos Hernandez. But now that Carlos Hernandez is not in the UFC, like why would anybody watch Road to UFC? Like he was the only guy that had a reason to watch it to find out who his next opponent was. They literally fired the main watcher of Road to UFC. Who watches Road to UFC more than Carlos Hernandez?
The Road to UFC gatekeeper, man.
Yeah, dude, he was fucking there with a notebook. He probably is like he's like Shawshank Redemption. He's like Brooks when he got out of prison. Like he's still like even though he got cut from the UFC, he's like where are you going, Carlos? I got to research my next opponent. Like Carlos, you're not in the UFC anymore. You don't have to watch Road. You don't have to do it. It's like what? Oh yeah. Oh, they're not coming. They're not coming to get you, Carlos. They're not going to
fight.
You.
He's going to fight the finalists in Rise. All of them.
Fuck, dude. Like, this isn't going on. Like, make it age. Like
do you have anyone that you're looking forward for Contender Series?
Not really, unless they sign my unless they sign my coach to get his shot. But yeah, there's a lot of good people getting their shot. The Road to UFC this morning was apparently really good. I just saw some highlights. I didn't watch it.
I woke up at 7 a.m. to watch like a zombie.
You're savage, bro.
I'm not sure if I'm doing it again tomorrow.
Well, you know what? Maybe I should have, because like I always tell myself, right? I'm like, well, with all the tape I have to do, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to watch tape for these guys anyways. I'll just save it for then, right? But I don't know anymore, because like we can't watch any of the fights that like have happened in the last 6 months or something now or whatever. Or like only what is it like? There's literally like 30% of the fights that happened in the last 6 months are available, right? It probably breaks down to something stupid like that, right, Feño?
Yeah,
you're on the same grind as me. You know how it is.
It's the grind, man.
Dude, I'm like, what the?
Very short. Here in the chat, we have Pliskin. He says, "My dogs, we need to know the answer to the tough questions. Who is your undisputed GOAT tough coach?" And I know he's asking because he want us both to say Tito Ortiz, because Tito Ortiz is the GOAT tough coach, man.
Tito, where's the happy face Tito pick?
Tito was so good, man. It makes no sense, man.
It doesn't. It doesn't. He's like, and there's been plenty of instances of that. If you watch tape where you're just like, holy shit. Like, I love watching old tape where he's in the corner. Like, I forget what fight. Like, he was in the same corner as Randy Couture for a fight. Like, and like, holy shit. They're like, and Tito is actually giving like arguably the better advice. Like, what? And Randy's not bad in the corners either. Randy's actually funny in the corners because he's like, I'm Randy Couture, all American, wholesome, but in the corner, he's like, you fucking brother, didn't even like they don't go back. And you see the real Randy come out, and then even the commentary, Joe be like, oh, Randy's got a bit of a pouty mouth on him, doesn't he? Like they're taking that.
Oh man. Tito used to be in the corner for Cyborg, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Him and Jason Perillo, because they all worked together. Yeah, he was a Jason Perillo guy too.
He was one of but I feel like Tito got too late into Jason. He could have been better if he got earlier.
Dude, he had good Muay Thai for his elbows and knees.
Tito was doing some cool stuff. During that knockout against Chuck Liddell, the second fight, I think. Tito was trying to like roll and doing some like high elbow guard, and it didn't work. But it was like an interesting look, actually. Like it wasn't bad, man. Who else was good? Chael Sonnen was actually pretty good too, right? Against Jones.
Again, a guy we were praising and one of my favorite all-time fighters was the worst. I can remember that. BJ Penn was probably the worst. Be first! Be first! Be first! Be first, Nate! Be first, Gray! Be first!
Another parallel between BJ and Conor, right?
Terrible tough coaches?
Oh, because yeah.
Yeah.
Because Conor, I didn't see the original, the against Faber. But I saw the last one against Chandler, and Connor was trash. He was so bad, man.
Oh. Yeah, well, he was probably on drugs, whereas like BJ was just like fat and out of shape. Like he was doing his, I remember he was doing his fat camp during the show, because that's another topic I tweeted about. Feño, I don't know if you saw, but like I get that it wouldn't get much of a response, but I'm just more, I guess I'm more surprised more people than me aren't talking about it. But like the average camp time has gone down, where it's like fighters used to have a fat camp, you know, and like BJ was having his fat camp on that show, and they're like, he was like all out of shape on the treadmill, and like Jens and all the Miletich guys are going like, look at his fat ass. Is he gonna make? There's no way he's making the weight. Like,
Oh man,
who was the good coaches? I'm trying to think. I can't remember. Matt Serra and Matt Hughes was the first one I watched live. I remember
was Matt
watching
Hughes
live.
any wood? I don't remember.
I don't think he was, and I think people just I think he came off worse because of it. Whereas Matt Serra, I think, came off because better because he was just like the crazy East Coast guy. I don't know how great of a coach he was, but
Bisping and Mayhem both were pretty good, actually.
I could see that. Yeah. Mayhem wasn't fully gone, and he was very seasoned because he had already had the TV experience from Bully Beatdown.
Yeah,
fresh off that, so he was really sharp, I'm sure.
Tony seems to have like a lot of fondness for Brock Lesnar. I don't remember if Brock was any good, but Tony seems to love Brock, man.
So I'm probably the worst ass now I'm thinking about it, because I barely watched any Tough. I'm like, that's the one thing I've been like stubborn about, that I barely ever watched. Like the last one I watched a full season was Tough 10.
I was very bad at watching Tough too.
I watched the heavyweights, the Kimbo Slice season. I think that was the last.
Oh yeah. I cannot think about that season and remember when Rashad out thug Rampage, man. That was the best moment of all time, man.
It helped the build up, dude. That was one of the biggest build up fights or whatever. Was it UFC 140 or 144 when they fought? I can't remember what the number was, but yeah, it was built off from that show. That was a big season. He had big country Roy Nelson just fucking everybody up because he had he still had like 50 fights or something. But still at that point, he was like super experienced, like way more experienced than all these, like, because they're like, it wasn't just Brendan Schaub. They had like a couple other guys, like, these guys used to play football. They all like, and again, like to this day, like Brendan Schaub was the best football player.
I hate because like people probably use the actual result of the fight as a racist thing, but I remember that clip of like Big Baby screaming to Mitrione,
Big Baby,
like being super popular. Like, oh, look at the scared white boy! And like, do you realize that they fought and Mitrione beat his ass?
Yeah, that was just, it was like people did. It was just like, oh, it was one of those. It's that thing where I talk about where it's like, just because you're saying something positive doesn't mean it's any less racist, right? And that applies to black athletes, let's be honest, right? Whether there's like, oh, he's so big and scary. I'm like, because he's a big black guy, he's big and scary. Like, obviously, it's tongue in cheek. I'm not like clutching my pearls over it or trying to get anybody canceled, right? But it's one of those funny sports things you point out. And I remember, and like, this is before Derek Lewis, folks, had any of, like, he barely had any. He had, I could count on one hand the amount of UFC fights he had, but he had Knockout King tattooed on his chest, and like he came on with a couple big, like, scary knockouts, and people were like, the ring shakes when he steps. He's the biggest heavyweight ever. And Derek Lewis is a big man, but he's not as big as like people like try to make out. Like, there's actually footage of him fighting at 205, like really like slim and doing ninja arm bars, like on the ground, like in like, like not long before he went to the UFC.
Derek, you can tell Derek is not I mean, he's big, obviously, but there have been bigger dudes, because when he got in shape, he was under 265 immediately.
Right.
Like, and Brock was like with abs for the fight against Mark Hunt, and he was like 290.
Yeah, on fight night. But yeah, like there was that stereotype, and like, I can't remember how big of a favorite Derek Lewis was over Matt Mitrione, but like, I was barely bet. Like, I just started betting. I barely bet at all that like then, but I was just like, wait, they have Matt Mitrione. I think it was like plus 350. They had him as a plus 350 underdog, and I was like, this is a heavy. And he like knocked out Derek Lewis like within like a couple seconds. Like,
it was such a sick knockout.
Yeah, and I was just like, and it was one of those times where I'm just like, Okay, I'm not trying to act like a genius because it's heavyweight MMA, but at the same time, I'm just like, that number doesn't make sense. Pull the trigger. That's why it didn't make sense. It was like, it was just this thing where like people automatically seem like, oh no. I'm like, no, this Matt Mitrione guy's actually like got some skills, and this
Yeah,
and that. He was
pretty good, man. I feel like he was never the same after Herb Dean allowed Travis Brown to just poke him in the
it's
eye like a
terrible.
million times. And then he got caught and went to Bellator, and he had some moments. And then he had like a super bad luck streak on Bellator too, where he got like 3 fights and in a low blow.
And here's the thing too, is he also around that time too, he started doing camps at home /
Oh, okay.
sometimes he would go do a little bit at Killcliff, because originally during that run too, another reason why I liked his chances, because after the show, Matt Mitrione stuck in Vegas and he was training at Extreme Couture. He was training catch wrestling with my coach Neil Melanson, and then he was training his striking with Ray Sefo, and that's when he was getting the knockouts and you saw the striking improvement.
Yeah, I even remember he was training with Sefo. I remember he was training with I don't know who the coach was. Maybe it was, but I remember seeing some like very old structurals with Mitrione and Pat Berry. Do you remember those?
Oh wow, yeah, they had a relationship. I can't remember the connection, but yeah, the Predator Pat.
Predator Pat.
Okay. Predator Pat's Open Mat, man. Predator Pat's Open Mat. That's what he was advertising.
Okay. Next one is a bit long, but it's for our boy Synchro Wing.
Yeah, Synchro Wing.
Yeah, he wants the answer here. He wants to choose. He wants us to choose a superpower from a list that he has. A superpower for fighting. So okay.
Oh, okay.
Option 1, your eyes ability to make perfect reads, as in you can perfectly detect when the opponent is making a fake or attacking for real, and you can read the opponent's weight transitions perfectly. The be water fighter, essentially. That one is sick, man. Like, imagine the highlight reel if you had that power.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a good
Number 2, your shoulder fade and rear hip fade can cause the opponent to freeze for half a second. That's crazy, man.
I low-key gonna bookmark that one.
We have number 3, infinite cardio. Infinite cardio is not as attractive because you actually have to be good at fighting.
Yeah. Yep.
Number 4, the ability to distort your opponent's perception of distance, as in you can make an optical illusion that makes you seem close when you're actually far, or seem far when you're actually close. You will probably get caught that you have powers with one of these, and you get put in a laboratory for the rest of your life, man.
I'd be afraid of that one because it might turn into like you're just fighting a really janky fighter where you can't predict what the fuck he's gonna do.
Number 5 is skin that hardens to the strength of steel upon impact. This can be done offensively and defensively. You would end up killing some guy, man. That was kind of dangerous. And number 6, the most coachable fighter. You can pick up and learn techniques instantly just by looking at it once, and you can follow directions from your corner perfectly, assuming you have the team to give you the right reads. To be honest, I would pick like the first one, man.
Yeah, I'm a creep. So when you said that question, I was like, "Ooh, invisibility!" So I can. And then you're like, "For fighting," and I'm like, "Oh, never mind." That train of thought got shut down real fast, Feño. You know where Dan Tom was going with that one. So of course I'm like, okay, now which of these powers could I also use for fighting, but also for girls? No, just kidding.
Yeah, we need the sequel. We need the list of powers that you would choose for women.
No. Yeah, I don't know if the first one would have any. Maybe the first one would give me some kind of helpful perception. So I would probably go with that. Although I will say it's a close second is number 2 option, only because when I watch back footage of myself, I don't know if I watched too much Volk tape, but I'm always doing shoulder and hip feints like a motherfucker.
Oh yeah,
naturally.
man.
So I'm like, that one would be useful for me because I'm like, I would like have a frozen opponent most of the time.
So you give
myself on distance and feinting.
you get to get a cheat freeze.
Leon Edwards would like it because then it'd make his opponent as inactive as he is. You know, I could just do the Leon Edwards approach. It's like,
You just look sexy with that.
do my southpaw fucking face. Like, yeah, you don't want to come into this because that's essentially what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, I'm trying to freeze him with my sexiness, anyways. Yeah, I'll go number 2 for some variety. Give me number 2.
Okay.
Because you know why? You know why? My confidence and my self-esteem is so low that number 1 still wouldn't work for me. I'd be like, I know I got it, but I'm not. I don't know, man. This guy looks like he hits really hard. I don't know if I want to test this. I wouldn't be confident enough to have him use number 1.
Okay. Victor asks, has your view on fighter development and training changed since you started compared to now? Meaning, what you recommend to a fighter to train, or how do they go about skill development for MMA? Less individual wrestling practice, more cage MMA wrestling. I mean, obviously, like when I first started like thinking about like scouting and coaching and all of that, like I had a lot of different ideas. Um, I used to be more in the camp of like I used to think like, oh, the MMA natives are going to take over, and I feel like the biggest difference that I have in opinion right now is that I think it's actually good to have a specialty. Obviously, being a well-rounded fighter is never going to hurt you, but you gotta have an A game. I feel when you don't have an A game, it's a lot harder to get to a winning condition. Like you can go where your opponent is weaker, but what if they keep dragging you to their actual A game where they have a lot more depth than you? I feel like being an specialist and then becoming well rounded is like the best path to good development, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
I agree, but I also just will add to that depending on what kind of specialist you are is also going to determine your pathway.
Yeah,
So now like now it might be different now with the lack of places to get experience and the fact that the big machine is rushing their products to market in the UFC. That more experience for everybody really wouldn't hurt. Like if you wanted to broad brush, right? Like that's the safer thing to say. But the traditional model, and I've got this from speaking with coaches that develop fighters. Shout out to my guy Dennis Davis, another Extreme Couture, former Extreme Couture coach. Now he does his own thing. You might recognize that name. He's fought like guys like Nate Diaz back in the day and shit. Old Team Quest guy. And he would say that if the guy was a wrestler, we could afford to get him. We could afford to waste time with amateur fights. We could afford to waste time with professional regional fights. All these things on the development tier. Because even if it's a long fight where they're getting miles put on them, because the odometer is very real. It's funny. You think that fighters don't pay attention to it because they live in the fantasy. To us, they live in this fantasy land where it's all about that self-confidence they need to achieve to a point of delusion. But really, it's actually very aware, if it's a good coach from the ground up where
yeah,
the coaches are aware of the odometers and they don't want to put a guy who's a jiu-jitsu guy. He might be an ace jiu-jitsu guy. And yeah, he's serious about working on his fighting, but he also knows he's going to be more comfortable going on his back or he's going to be fighting from negative positions more. I want that guy more ready before he goes into a fight. And when he does go into a fight, even then, I don't want him toiling around, wasting miles for free.
Yeah, you have that safety blanket with the wrestlers that if things start getting sketchy, they're going to get top position and they're going to win anyway.
Yes, and same with the striker as a jiu-jitsu guy too, because if he's good at striking, chances are, and some guys are naturals too, granted, but it still applies to them. But chances are they did some kind of maybe other striking art before MMA, and they're again they're that kind of specialists. And it's like, yeah, we don't need to, let's get the ground deficiencies done in the training room. But when it comes to the actual fighting, like this guy's fight ready. The striker's a little more fight ready. Let's not have them toil around in the amateurs and, or this or that. And maybe the build maybe will be a little, a little faster, you could say, but it depends. Sometimes, wrestling, for a long time was the dominant archetype. So even though the wrestlers could afford to toil around, they were the ones that got pushed. So there's so many contexts to it the factors at play. It's really so hard. It's case by case scenario, but I would say specialty, yes, and I'd say more time the better. I'm not saying fight for free as an amateur, but I'm just saying anything before the UFC, more
Yeah.
time the better. Because once you get to the UFC, I don't care who your manager is. I don't care how much promise you have. I don't care how rich and well the UFC is doing. They will fuck your career up.
Yeah, I
They
feel
won't
like
care. No one
I
will
feel
notice,
like
and no one will notice.
most guys, unless they have the, if you don't have the level to actually like win your the against the low tier of the UFC very easily, your development is going to stall because you will start fighting to survive instead of development when you're in the UFC. If you want to see like two cases from very young fighters that went very differently, look at Raul Rosas. I feel like the development completely stagnated once he got to the UFC because like he can only afford to go to his winning condition. He cannot like afford to be developing his striking during fights. Like he can do that.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
it's a
go on.
great. That's a great. No, I was gonna say that's a great example for the jiu-jitsu. And with that same spirit and theme, Feño, I was gonna ask that from the wrestling side of that coin, right? How many? And I talked about this when making my case before the DeRitter and Nickel fight, where I'm saying like just like there's certain stereotypes, whether it's like something borderline race related, like big scary black guy is gonna beat Matt Mitrione, or something like wrestling accolades, and there's certain things that like are trigger words, and people like will take it and they'll run to the bank with it, right? And they'll put like this person that must mean they're gonna wipe the floors, right? And it's like if we stop and think about it, like with the wrestling stereotype, like the development, like we talked about, like these are the guys that can afford to toil and grow more organically, but they're also the ones that get kind of pushed the fastest, right? And maybe is that where the wrestle boxer the action fighting wrestle boxer, is that where that archetype comes from? And is that where we see even guys that have been around for a while, like Chandler, like Chandler's clearly post prime, clearly
And
Chandler's been
there's
compromised for a while, like he
yeah,
gave
and
his best miles a while ago.
there's another thing that comes into play too, is that because I was going to compare like Raul Rosas to Ian Gary, and another big difference between both of them is that obviously Gary had like a perfect path to the top of the division, like a lot of like low tier fights before stepping up in competition. And but the thing is that Ian Gary, I don't know what's his financial situation, but I can tell that if the UFC offered him a bad fight when he was coming up, he could say no.
Yeah.
And Raul Rosas, I know for a very good source that he actually needs the money. So when the UFC calls, he's going to be there, even if it is a bad fight. Like, because if he had a good manager and he could afford to not fight, they would have told him, "Hey, the Christian Rodriguez fight is bad for you. You're not winning this one."
Yeah, that's a huge thing too. That's a big, again, that's a big thing. It's I was joking like, the same reason, all our complaints, all these announcements, all the same reason. It's corporification of UFC and their relentless schedule. On the other side of that coin is capitalism, right? And
Yeah.
And that's where we most of us can relate, because we're all feeling the weight of that shit, right? And these fighters are humans too, so that's another great point. Like all the stuff we're talking about could mean fuck all if you need the money. I mean, I know Feño, I know we've talked about this before on podcasts that UFC arguably is almost in tune when fighters are desperate. When you look at who they usually offer to face the Raul Rosas, I know we're talking about Raul Rosas. That's an interesting tidbit you gave, by the way. But like to face the Raul Rosas juniors of the world, we talk about like it's almost like they know these guys are like not just set to lose, but like they're like, oh, he's in camp shambles, like personal life's probably not going great.
Yeah,
He's
they
fought in a
do that
while.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
And they offer it to you because you don't know what, and the fighters say it all the time, like, well, I jumped on it because you don't know if I say no, the next offer is going to probably be even longer. And I was already broken waiting to fight, and then you have that. That's why it sucks when you have the asshole fans going, nobody put a gun to their head. It's a free country. Like,
Yeah, man.
yeah, no one put a
That's
gun to their head, but like, kind of there is, man.
okay. Let's get to a few more questions
Yeah,
before
sorry, I didn't mean to make it
leaving.
dark,
Yeah.
folks.
Um. Uh. YRGY Dude 2.0 asks, could Prime Aldo be triple champion, assuming he could cut to 35 in his prime? Very short answer, yes. Yeah. I think Aldo would have mowed the floor with either Benson Henderson or Anthony Pettis. And with
Oh, I
Dominic
wish we got
Cruz.
that fight.
And with Dominic Cruz too. So
I wish we got those fights, man.
I think, yeah, it sucks, man. Because Aldo wanted to do it, but like the UFC was like pushing very hard for him to drop the belt. Like I understand why he didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
If anything, I blame GSP more because like the UFC was allowing GSP to remain champion to face Anderson Silva, and he still didn't want it.
Yeah.
And all the analysts say like, "Oh, GSP would have won against Anderson so easily." But guess what? He didn't want none of it. GSP didn't want to smoke. You just remember that. But yeah, I think it's like with the push of the machine behind it, like Aldo could have probably done it.
I'm
But
glad you brought up.
yeah, go on. The
Sorry,
dogs are
dogs are
getting
barking.
scorned.
Yeah, I know. Like someone's there. I'm glad you brought up that GSP thing because as much as we love to give GSP credit and stuff, and I definitely put him up there. Yeah, it didn't seem like he wanted that fight, and with the John Jones stuff going on right now, it reminds me. I'm just like, again, man, say what you will about BJ Penn, but and say what you will about Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan put it the best. I remember him saying one time, "There's probably no more courageous fighter than BJ Penn." And you think
Yeah,
about
for
it.
sure.
This guy never pulled out from injuries. He never missed weight. He never fucking said no. He always pursued the biggest fights possible. I mean, yeah. I mean, he was talking about calling out Tim Sylvia for the heavyweight belt after UFC 46 when he beat Matt Hughes, and everybody started laughing at the press conference. And he goes, "I wasn't kidding," And then you had Dana White going, "I have to on a weekly basis. I have to deal with this fucking maniac from Hawaii calling me, asking for fights with Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather. I'm over this." And then these were actual quotes, people.
Yeah,
So
but I feel like in the modern times, like people don't realize how some of those fights mean a lot. Actually, like like people say like especially the Anderson haters is like, oh, he moved up to face Jovers at 205. Like, not really. Those three were actually relevant fighters. People don't remember. Irwin was like relevant at the time, like not a contender, but he was like a top 15 guy.
And there's pressure on UFC to do the counter programming for the Irvin fight, and they have to save the Brazil card with the Bonner fight. So these were like impromptu fights as well to save the UFC.
And it was Anderson like just taking those fights, and he took the DC fight too.
And I'm sure the UFC came to him with cash for all those fights, but yeah, those.
Yeah, but still, like the UFC came with cash for a lot of fighters, and a lot of them didn't accept. So
sure, no, I give him credit for sure.
And he also did the opposite. Like people don't understand that at the same time. When you move up, like obviously you're going to look good, but also taking the fight against Nick Diaz was a risky move because if you lose that one, like or you lost to a welterweight, and your legacy is like destroyed. So I also appreciate that one, to be honest.
Yeah. Although I will say, yeah.
And
BJ got beat up by Nick, but it was a good fight. It was a good fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight.
Actually a really good fight.
And that's why I give credit to Topuria to take in, especially Jai Herbert, because Jai Herbert is huge.
Yeah. I still don't get the Topuria having trouble making the again, and I'm a guy who's sympathetic to the thickly built out there, And even me, I'm just like scratching my head, like, what the fuck, man? Like, I mean, I'm not even tall at 5'9", but I'm like, you're 5'7", and it's like, how thick can you be, buddy? I know he's got some thighs on
Yeah,
him, but I'm just
he
like,
doesn't look
damn.
so big. He doesn't look that big, but
He fought 35s before in his career. Not that that was healthy, but Patty
his
also
brother
fought
looks
35 somehow.
huge, and still fights 135.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Mark Monsi asked, who do you think will be the welterweight champ 1 year from now, 2 years from now? 1 year from now, hopefully Jack Della, man, because he rules.
Yeah, man, that's I love his style so much, man. He's a boy
he's
for
my
sure for all of
he's
us.
my absolute favorite. Second place to me is probably Pratis, but
Yeah,
distant second, to be honest. Like, I like Jack Della quite a bit more. I know a lot of people love Shafkat. I don't really connect with the style of Shafkat. He's obviously like very good and
yeah,
exciting,
sure.
but I don't know, man. It's like those like tall, stiff guys. I never liked that much.
Yeah, we like a lot of the same fighters. Although I do worry. I think my my style is probably like a style you would hate, though. I feel like.
We'll see. We'll see when we finally get to spar.
Yeah. It'd be annoying probably, but no, we like a lot of the same fighters though for sure. Like, it's hard. I don't really have. It's hard to have favorites. Man, I'm just too jaded and shit, and I'm trying to be professional. Not really, but like, yeah, styles wise, like Jan, Jack Della, certain guys really do it for me for sure. Of those types and stuff. So.
Okay, here we have Fiji. He asked the Topuria thing. How concerning is that Topuria splitting with his coaches 6 weeks out from a lightweight title fight? We already touched on that. So let's get into the second question that he sent. It was Daniel Santos looked good up a weight class up on short notice at UFC 315. Should he stay featherweight or go back down to bantamweight? Man, he looked crazy because he didn't even look in great shape, and he looked tremendous in that
It's
fight,
like
man.
Thick King. Yeah, he was like
chubby Willy Cat, man.
Yeah, he looked like mini DC out there or something, like just going at it. I don't know. We have a name for that, like a Roberto Duran reference or something of a certain era. Like we have to have a certain reference for that. Like I love it. I'm obviously I love it. I'm fucking.
I mean, he fought a big guy too on Park, so I don't know, man. I would say like try it. Maybe he could stay for a few fights because like we've seen a few like small 135ers have success. Like we have Nate Wood, and we have who's the other bantamweight that move up? We have another one who's also small. I don't remember who.
Shit.
Oh man, I cannot remember, but
yeah, me too. I'm always with you on the Nathaniel Wood. I was thinking him too,
but yeah, I think he should give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, like he can move like back down. He's still young, so okay. Next question, Mr. Adin. Is ground and pound becoming a lost art in modern MMA?
They're reading our minds. They're reading our minds.
Yeah.
Help them.
In observing today's
On the
MMA,
notes for
there
you
seems to
guys.
be more of an emphasis towards neutralization and control. The most MMA gyms not train ground and pound like Fyodor anymore. Is it sad to see the only martial art exclusive to MMA being neglected? Yeah, we pretty much agree with you. We already touched on that. I think people should study a lot of old school fighters when it comes to ground pound. Fyodor always a very good point, and he has a book where he goes into detail into his ground pound system. It's very good. I used to have a PDF of that back in the day. And I also always shout out Tito when it comes to ground pound.
Yeah,
especially ground pound from close guard. Those like drilled combos from close guard are very good, and they're still effective. Like if you watch at Prime Tito, it's not only like the body head, but it's also like the way he positions his head. And mind you, that's a huge head, but but it's the way that he distributes his weight and everything that makes him very effective from those kind of positions. GSP too. He wasn't like super damaging, but like very constant like output from with ground pound from top position. And BJ, we talk about a lot of about BJ too during the episode.
Yeah, man. I don't actually. You know what? I don't think I have a top 5 ground and pound. Maybe we got to do that episode, Feño. Would you be
We'll
down?
have to do it, man.
Would you be down? Yeah, because I don't think I actually, you know, now I think I have to do that episode before I can even do the article, huh? Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's why you know, it's been hard to obviously stand for Chandler, but I did for back in the day for him because he actually had a really good ground and pound. I'm talking about back in like Bellator Eddie Alvarez rematch, even though his striking went to shit in that fight because he moved from training with Gil Martinez to Alliance, but he still worked with my coach Neil Melanson, who's like all about ground and pound. I'm like, just certain rules of like a guy overhooks your arm, right? Works off the overhook. The rule of thumb, you put head pressure to the same side as the overhook. You touch your head to the mat next to their head on the same side. It kills the overhook. Folding over with the elbows and just setting up ground.
Man, Melanson is so good with that kind of stuff, man.
And you watch it, even as bad as Chandler's approach was of his no defense, forgetting to roll under his crosses, gets his eyes closed like a Rocky fight. You're like, wow, he actually could still win this Eddie Alvarez rematch because whenever he takes Eddie to the ground, he was like almost not to be a Joe Rogan, Tim Bosch and Matt Hamill rape choke, but he was doing the hand on just like at a certain point, like he worked him over so hard, he almost like looked like he was going to beat the life out of him. Like, why aren't you doing that more? And then since then, he's gone away from it. You're like, Mike, what? Why have you gotten away from your ground and pound? Like, there's been so many, like, even the Oliveira fight. That's how I picked him the first time.
On the first one, he had like nice ground and pound. He was,
and you could see that was the path. Like, and he wasn't even like pushing that initiative. Like that happened organically, and he still almost won that way, right? But it was a question. You're like, so to that question, it's not even a lost art. What's even more frustrating is guys who could do it have gone away from it. Now Chandler is kind of a mental case, and way past prime expiration.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not even a great example anymore. But you also wonder, we talked about the criteria changing a lot of these scorecards. We're talking about the Dillashaw and Cruz fights, you wonder how much of that criteria change has moved people away from grappling, which means they're going to move away from ground and pound, right? And subsequently, right? How much of it is a factor of that? The rules change.
Okay, next question. Sammy Arnett asks, what type of game plan would you give DDP against Hamza Chimaev? I would say the most important thing is to stay away from the fence. I think that's the most important thing always against Chimaev. Like, Chimaev is very dangerous, but a lot of his, and obviously if you're not like good, he's still going to like take you down in the middle of the cage and beat you there. But against high level of opposition, he relies a lot on cage wrestling to actually get to the back. That he's like his preferred position.
Yes. Yep.
So I would say like keep it in the middle of the cage and use the size. Like obviously Chimaev is big at 185, but he's a former welterweight. Like DDP is also a former welterweight, but in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Chimaev's just like he couldn't make 170 anymore because like he's very big, but he stayed that size more or less. Well, DDP is like basically a light heavyweight nowadays.
Yeah, well, he's fueled by apartheid, so he's just marching around all over the place. But
it's like he's like 50% Dutch bro, 50% apartheid. So
yeah, he's yeah, I would just do the Robert Downey Jr. in blackface meme. Survive. That's always the advice for Skamzat. But more importantly, we talked about the 2-on-1 earlier. Usman didn't even have ideal position. He still got his back taken, but the 2-on-1 is just so effective that he actually was able to stall out and arguably draw / even beat, depending on how you want to score that.
And
fight,
then when Usman and later established the jab at distance and forced Chimaev to shoot from afar, he was defending the takedowns. And on the third round, when he got taken down, he was able to get back up because it was an open space and it wasn't against the fence.
Yeah, so I would say the 2-on-1 in conjunction with the advice that I think it's from. I think I've heard this from Heavy Hands. So Feño or the chat, if you want to confirm, I think it was Connor and Phil, where they talk about the Dagestani ride meta, so to speak, against the cage, and Hamzat has his own version, of that, and they talk about actually, and I referenced this earlier about John Fitch's move, using the John Fitch's move, and to get there is you want to get the person, and I do this too because I'm just like, I know it's desperate and I can get my back taken turtling. And if I do get my back taken, my move is I don't want to get flattened out. I always try to get them to make a sandwich between the mat and myself. So I want it to go to the mat, my opponent, and me. So I'm not carrying their weight. I'm not belly down, right? Like they're carrying me, right? They're still on my back. They're still trying to choke me, right?
Yeah, but
That's
that's a
kind of
way better
how
position. Yeah.
and DDP, we've seen him, especially in grappling. He's got insane like bridges and like turn-ins and stuff. He's got that, and he's got that R word strength, that
Yeah.
R word ability. Like his whole game is R word ability, that's his whole game. So it's like, yeah, of course you can hit that, right? Like I honestly think that would be his best move is falling to that position. If you get there 2-on-1 to keep yourself safe, like Kamaru, but instead of tripoding and holding the weight up like Kamaru was doing at times, like a wrestler, just roll to your, be confident in your, because his grappling, I'm guessing his mat wrestling and jiu-jitsu, he's better than Usman's. So yeah, you do that and try to do the baseball bat, as they say, where you turn, you corkscrew yourself around, make Chimaev show his bottom game or at least work from bottom, make him work, make him get tired.
Okay. Next, leave it in Oshot ask, maybe briefly assess Islam's hands and what vulnerabilities his defense has in general. I feel like he tends to reach a fair bit. Yes, that's one of the Islam. Actually, against Porter, he looked mostly clean, but he still has some stiffness and some jankiness that could be like uh problematic uh at some parts. I feel like one thing about Islam is that he's probably like susceptible to same time counters. I think because like he takes very good proactive measures after his combinations. He moves his head. We saw some nice pivots from him, but when he's like punching and you punch at the same time, that's where you can get him. And if you have decent enough footwork to move on the outside and not get trapped against the fence, um, that really is that you can really make him reach. Actually, like we saw some like ugly like combinations from him against Oliveira when they were like in outside range, especially when especially when he's outside range, he can tend to drag his left feet with his left hand. And when he squares himself like that, there's some vulnerabilities, especially with that. His head movement is actually like when he's punching himself, he's usually not putting himself outside the center line. He does after punching. He does a good job of like 1-2, and he gets to the side. But during combinations, I feel that obviously like no one wants to like plant his feet and exchange with Islam because he can change levels in any moment. But that's where the boxing like problems I feel lie, and they're hard to exploit because he has that wrestling safety blanket, I feel.
Yeah, it's so hard to extend, but extension is the key, whether it's extending the exchanges and extending the fight, as Volkanovski showed in the first fight, the cardio aspect as well. So extension is the key in everything, but it's so hard with like why you just said uh, with the grappling threat. So for Jack, it's going to have to be. It probably won't come till later if he has any opportunities, and his real opportunities to extend are going to be by countering in combination, which is harder in open space. You got to look for the right counters. And again,
Yeah,
Islam's going to do the right proactive movement after that as well. So a lot of it's going to have to be, I think he's going to have to actually go clinch for clinch in a lot of spots and show the ability to both defend, stymie, and score. And then if he's able to defend, stymie, and score off the separation is where he's got to chase him down and just make the
yeah.
fight, keep that alert mode up, keep
I
him
feel like
able,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
feel like early in the fight, like Jack, if we're talking about Jack, he probably has to like use pretty much the same approach that he had against Belal. Like not super
Yeah,
focused on long combinations, just like stick and move, using your footwork a lot. So you can get a very good read of the habits, and then when you have that, you can actually go for the longer combinations, attacking the body and all of that. I feel.
yeah, it wouldn't come till way later in the fight, but that's be the interesting thing about that fight and the kicks too. If Islam kick, because JDM hasn't really fought a lot of kickers, and even guys who can kick, like underrated kicks like Bilal, didn't kick as much as we'd like maybe to see them
Yeah,
kick
because
when
Belal
they
was
fought Jack.
being
So
being successful with that nasty body kick that he has, but
yeah,
he didn't use it as much. I feel like that's one of the few criticisms that I have for Belal. I feel like Belal actually fought a very good fight, but
yeah, it could have been more kicks, but again, it could have been the foot too because I know people either defend it, like Polar, they either defend it or they're questioning it without crediting Jack so much. And one thing I said, I think I pointed out in round one, and I saw someone, I think it was Kenny Florian, who pointed this out too. So I felt a little less crazy, but they noticed Bilal walking a little funny at the end of the first round. And he had a serious potentially career entry, like a bone infection on his foot, and you could even see
yeah,
like a patch on that foot. And like even you said, Feño, who have a pretty good understanding, even you say the one criticism you have, right, is like the only one question is not so much the takedowns, is the lack of kicks, right? And I think there's something to that. But I would like to see it, and not that I care about re-adjudicating that fight, but as far as
but
like watching Jack against a kicker, I still want to see him against a fully fledged kicker.
yeah. I feel like Belal is going to be like immediately. I mean, Islam is going to be like immediately more dangerous. But if there's one thing that Belal has over Islam, it's probably cardio and durability. So if it
Yeah,
goes late, I feel like Jack it's probably going to have a big edge.
yeah, big time.
And the
Because
last question is also related to Jack. Conor McPherson asks, is JDM the most skilled boxer in the UFC? Does he have a chance to finish Islam? Most skilled, I think like right now, I would still would have to give it to Topuria.
same.
Um, especially because they are like in their prime, but Jack is up there, man. Like very sophisticated footwork too, combination punching. Um, maybe a bit more talented in the timing and spacing area is Topuria, but they're close in skill to be honest. They're up there, some of the best right now, for
And you
sure.
could argue, maybe not now, but you could argue that Jack's game, even if he never gets to the depths of a dangerous of a ground game as Taporia has, you could argue that his striking game is more connective, has more connective tissue.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
way he uses
and
frames, how it connects to other things.
yeah, more seems to be like more resourceful inside the clinch,
Mhm.
and obviously like better
Stances.
and better kicks, better knees too. So, but yeah, it's they both of them up there for sure right now.
Yeah, that's another
I
thing. You mentioned it too, not just for the Bilal fight, but I know me and you specifically were some of the few that mentioned it even before the Randy Brown fight, that Jack actually does have underrated kicks. And in my
yeah,
breakdown, I said not just he has underrated kicks, but he actually shows the knee and the building materials for like a southpaw, like a double attack that would come in real handy against a guy like Bilal style and stature.
and the
Which we
snap kick
saw
to the body
and he used a
was
lot more of that.
money.
Yeah, because early JDM looked more, did actually did that more. He got boxing heavy for like a nice middle chunk there,
Yeah,
right? And people forgot, but I'm like, no, he has it, and then he pulled it back out for the right fight, which is a good sign.
never been afraid to shoot for a takedown either. Too.
Sure.
A very complete fighter, man. I felt like I was kind of crazy talking to my friends when he was coming up. Like they were like, "Ah, yeah, he's a like cool action fighter," and I was like, "No, this is an insane prospect. This is."
Yeah, no, I was blown away. I went back to even when I was proud of what I wrote on the grading. I think my grading the winners off the contender series. I'm like, yeah, dude, this guy he's ready. And you know me, I'm skeptical as fuck when it comes to writing those about like a lot of these guys. Forget the grades, but as far as like my thoughts,
And I feel like people were being swayed by results from opposition more than like trusting their eyes, because like I feel like people were down on like the Hafez and the Lusa fight.
Yes, that was so annoying. The Hafez fight. I feel like I was a truther with like, no, he actually had that fight won, and it was short notice and making up and I almost feel like it eventually like must have seeped in for me to pick Bilal because I was always like feeling like I was always having to defend that performance with Jack.
And if anything, like it showed that he was like a better grappler than people were giving credit for. Because
yeah, that was a weird fight, a lot of weird circumstances. So.
and I feel like and the Lusa fight too, because they got into a lot of exchanges and he wasn't able to finish him. And I feel like Lusa and Hafez like not being like not living to their potential after their fights with Jack, like kind of altered the perception. But people forget that the wins against like Emir was very not surprising, but was like a very impressive win. Like nobody actually beats Emir like that.
That being said, it is going to have to be a specialization to beat a guy like Jack because, again, even though I was wrong with my pick, and even though I'm a big fan of Jack like you are, my reasoning was still kind of sound in the fact that this guy does fight inherently with close margins, right?
Yeah.
Even guys like us who are truthers are like, no, he's rolling with the punches. No, he's winning by the criteria. Like even us, we got to be like, he is fighting within close margins. So
the one saving grace for that style is that he packs the big power, so he can turn it around at any moment. But when he doesn't, it looks kind of close.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be like a, like a Tyron Woodley, prime Tyron Woodley detonation shot on the feet, or a, maybe we'll see with Makhachev, right? He is going up to welterweight, but if anybody deserves that respect of getting into that Damian Maia game over level territory with their ground game, you could do a lot worse. You could do a lot worse than having the name Islam Makhachev coming out of your mouth, right? But it's going to take, to your point, Feño, why specialization is so important, right? It's going to take a specialist to beat a guy like Jack.
Yeah, and at the same time, like, and obviously one thing that give a lot of like Jack fans confidence going into this Makhachev is that he has Craig Jones, right? But
yes,
but you gotta understand that it kind of goes both ways, because like the Islam corner have tape because of their fight with Volkanovski of what Craig Jones is probably going to advise Jack Della to do in response to his usual tactics. So they can like counter game plan in that sense in a little bit. So it's going to be very interesting to see if it goes to the ground.
That's true, because if a dumbass like me picked up some tactics from it, there's no way they don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, and what I mean is like kind of like using a combination of an escape you talked about earlier, Feño, you like to use if you can get underhook their leg. You risk the arm trap, but if you get kind of deep, it's kind of a mix of that, but you're not depending on a high underhook. You're doing that, but you're turning in like a deep single, like you're almost turning into a high crotch. And that's kind of what Volk was using to turn in and diffuse and get to standing, get back and refine his base, and get the space and separations. And I mean, I remember having a round where my coach, the one I was talking about, the arm traps, had me in his spider web just locked up. And to me, it just felt like another day where I'm just getting like fucking owned at the office. And he eventually got me at the end of the round. But one of the assistant coaches was watching the match, was like, ooh, like sometimes someone will come around and like watch you like, oh, this is like interesting or whatever. And you kind of, I'm not focusing on that, but you pick up on that. And at the end, they're like, good job. I'm like, what do you mean I got fucking owned? They're like, no, you have to work really hard. That's his position. And you were giving him fits. And I'm like, all I was doing was just imitating that same thing Volk kept doing. You turn it into the single, and it kills so much setups.
Awesome,
it kills so
man.
much fucking attacks, you know. But to your point, if a dummy like me can not just pick it up, but even kind of apply it, like, of course these high level camps are fucking deconstructing it and they're gonna be prepared. So that's a great point, Feño, you bring up.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we answered the questions.
It's good, yeah.
And we
Some
had
of them
fun, man.
preemptively.
Yeah. We answered a lot of those before getting to them, so that was good,
Yeah.
man.
It makes you feel less bad about getting into those rants then, right? Because at least it was of interest and
Oh,
of
the rants
topic.
were awesome, man. Hey,
I just
Dan.
miss talking to you guys.
Yeah, man. We gotta stream more often, man. Hey, man. Plug your new podcast for
Oh
everyone
yeah,
that's
man.
not up to date.
Yeah, if you guys are crazy and missing me for whatever reason, I'm back on the not the weekly because not for but for every UFC fight. I basically took over hosting duties for the Dogger Pass podcast. So I got to get to some of those replies. Like it's always weird taking over a show, you know. Like I'm expecting I expected, you know, kind of the hate, so to speak, but hopefully I'm hoping I can win some people over. If you guys want to come help, you know, check it out. I'm on those feeds over there. You can always come like or say some positive comments. I'm gonna go with and go back to dive back into the comments and try to answer some. You know, you got to get dirty and whatnot, but I've been doing this long enough, so hopefully you know, it just feels good to be back, man. I'm so grateful for the opportunity, writing a junkie, doing some stuff at Homo Fight every once in a while. So yeah, find me at Dan Tom MMA on the Nazi app, formerly known as Twitter. And then also on Substack, which sadly is adjacent to some Nazis. Well, that's not really great, is it? Well, yeah, find me at Dan Tom MMA. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Feño, for having me.
You can find the man and Tom. And I'll be back with some videos on the other channel, as you know. And I catch you guys on the next one, though. Thank you for joining in. Now I have to find the end stream button. Okay, found it. Okay. Bye, guys.